Chapter 2644. Yi Qinghan's eyes were burning with determination. He had never fought with an emperor's inheritor, so he didn't know the difference between them. Today he had to try. The owner was calm and composed. She placed her hands behind her back and looked at the center of the battlefield silently. She didn't stop Yi Qinghan's persistence. This kind of lunatic wasn't afraid of death. Stopping him might be counterproductive. In this world, among the younger generation, this Yi Qinghan has the temperament of the primordial immortal emperor when he was young. However, his foundation is too weak. Otherwise, it's hard to say who would be the immortal emperor. The owner looked at Yi Qinghan's dominance and wildness. She couldn't help but take a deep breath. She was even more determined to conquer Yi Qinghan. Today, if Yi Qinghan didn't protect her, she might choose to kill him. Hua! Yi Qinghan held his blade and moved forward. His eyes could shatter mountains and rivers. Nothing could cover his eyes. Boom! Zhong Jingfu's aura exploded. He was like a god under the scorching sun. The blazing white light was so blinding that one couldn't even open their eyes. Even if the emperor's sword wasn't unsheathed, it still had the emperor's aura. This was the emperor's inheritance. Its advantage was unparalleled. However, Yi Qinghan didn't care. His eyes were filled with killing intent. If he had no choice, he could use the Human Dao Emperor Pagoda and the power of the Human Dao. At most, he would silence her. After all, he and the owner knew each other well. Please advise me. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. He stomped on the ground. His blade split mountains and rivers. Time and space were torn apart. Boom! The blade light rushed to the sky and slashed down from the void. It was powerful enough to swallow mountains and rivers. Zhong Jingfu looked coldly at Yi Qinghan's attack. His sword moved mountains and rivers. However, it wasn't the great Sun Emperor's sword. It was his own natal immortal sword. Its level wasn't inferior to Yi Qinghan's chaotic frenzy. Its sword aura soared to the sky. Its sword technique was extremely sharp. Xiao. Thousands of sword techniques flew in the sky and continuously collided with the blade. Yi Qinghan's hand was numb. If it wasn't for the flame ancestral arm, he would have been defeated in an incense stick's time. A firefly dares to compete with the moons. Zhong Jingfu roared furiously. His sword pierced through the void and went straight for Yi Qinghan's throat. Yi Qinghan's gaze remained unchanged as he brandished his long saber. Every slash of his saber contained enough strength to split a mountain. The shroud fluttered in the wind and was nearly pierced through by the sword chi several times. Open! Yi Qinghan's arms bulged, his veins almost bursting out of his flesh. Zhong Kuang opened the sky and split the earth. He slashed down with his saber, causing the blade to tremble. Boom! The saber and the sword chi surged into the galaxy. After they collided, a towering flame erupted and engulfed the two of them. Thud, thud, thud. Yi Qinghan went against the momentum and pushed Zhong Jingfu back. Every step he took left a footprint, shattering the mountain rocks. His eyes clashed with Zhong Jingfu's scorching sun-like eyes. His aura was rising. My physical body is enough. Yi Qinghan let out a low roar. His body shrunk back, and he used the momentum to rush forward and sent Zhong Jingfu flying more than 100 meters away. The mountains and rivers may change, but my Dao heart will never change. Slash the void, open the sky again. Yi Qinghan's domineering aura surged through the clouds. His saber aura surged through the galaxy. His saber art was ever-changing and contained countless sword arts and saber Dao. Although Yi Qinghan was not a saber art expert, he could integrate other cultivation techniques to produce an even stronger saber art. The workshop master and Zhong Jingfu's pupils shrunk. They could see how tyrannical Yi Qinghan's aura was. As for the followers outside, their eyes were wide open. At this moment, they finally understood why some people had the disposition of an emperor and could risk their lives to become an emperor. On the other hand, they could only be small pawns, trampled on by others to reach the peak. This power, this spirit, it was incomparable. Boom! Zhong Jingfu's figure spun and the stars shifted. It was as if he was teleporting. One sword, 100,000 swords. Every sword chi could kill people from 100 miles away. The sword lights and Dao arts fused together. The destructive power was exceptionally terrifying. The sword whistled. It was like the sound of nature, but also like a funeral song from hell. It made one's hair stand on end. Boom! The sword tip emitted flames from the friction. The Emperor's sword arch shattered the void and clashed with the saber edge. The impact caused the void to distort. Cracks appeared in time and space, almost swallowing a few mountains outside Jiangnan Immortal Valley. Hua! Boomed at the two's veins popped out as their flesh exploded. The impact sent them flying a few hundred meters away. Especially Yi Qinghan, who was at a disadvantage. He crashed into the divine rune restriction on the forehead mountain. His internal organs were almost shattered. The first layer of burial cloth was shattered. Hua! The divine rune restriction was activated. The divine light covered the sky and blasted Yi Qinghan away again. He fell heavily to the ground. However, before he could touch the ground, the God-Devourer eagle swooped down from the sky and caught his body. Then, it flew away and helped him reduce the impact. Yi Qinghan spat out a mouthful of essence blood. He supported himself on the back of the God-Devourer eagle with one hand. His right hand held the saber tightly. He slowly stood up and looked down at the malevolent Zhong Jingfu. Blood flowed out from the corner of Zhong Jingfu's mouth. His eyes were filled with anger. In his opinion, he was actually injured by an ant. It was intolerable. Yi Qinghan, let's call it a day. Prepare to die. Zhong Jingfu held the sword with both hands. He closed his eyes and his aura surged. He became one with the sword and transformed into the heavenly sword. This sword was enough to pierce through the wilderness and instantly kill a third-degree realm expert. Yi Qinghan's true strength was only equivalent to a third-degree realm expert. He relied on various divine weapons to fight against a fourth-degree expert. At this moment he felt the aura of death. Great Sun Flame Exterminating Sword Arts 7th Style, Sword Piercing the Firmament. The 7th style of the Emperor Sword Art was enough to kill a third-degree realm expert in the immemorial era. Not many people dared to fight against a fourth-degree expert today. Hua! The sword light pierced through the heavens and the underworld. His figure and aura were limitless. Once the sure-kill sword was executed, who could contend against it? This was Zhong Jingfu's peak standard. If this sword couldn't kill Yi Qinghan, then he wouldn't be able to kill Yi Qinghan. Hoo, dong dong dong, Yi Qinghan's aura was a little chaotic. His heart was beating wildly. He waved his hand and mobilized his three divine pets, the God-Devourer eagle, the multicolored snake, and the star-twining vine. He turned them into imprints and sealed them on his arms, allowing them to support his strength. Whoosh! The 9-linked ring gourd was also recalled. The heaven and earth devouring power turned into immortal energy and poured into his right arm in an instant. The flame ancestor's right arm was stimulated to its peak state. Hua hua hua! The human Dao technique was quickly circulating. The 5th level of profound was forcefully executed and mixed into Berserk's interior. At this moment, Berserk's interior was flowing with light. One could even see its internal structure. It was filled with chaotic aura and almost raised its grade again. Great Tao of Saber, I will transform my body into a saber. Berserk attack, heaven and earth rend. Hua! Yi Qinghan's aura rose even faster and rushed to the clouds in an instant. He was on par with Zhong Jingfu. Buzzed at the 7-foot Berserk's sword light shattered the void. No one dared to stand in the front anymore. Even the district master began to retreat. At the center of the battlefield, the aftermath could definitely injure the 4th level. Be careful. This attack will definitely heavily injure the two of you. There is no exception. The district master's voice was heavenly and vast. If I was afraid of death, I would have died long ago. Yi Qinghan was unafraid of death. If he could win this battle, the benefits to him would be immeasurable. Many mental cultivation techniques and human Tao profound that he had yet to comprehend would appear in his sea of consciousness. That's right. Yi Qinghan wasn't afraid of death, but Zhong Jingfu was. He was even afraid of losing. He had no way to retreat from this attack. There was a trace of fear in his heart, but it was quickly erased. If you aren't afraid of death, then this emperor will fulfill your wish. Roar! Boom. Emperor Sword Techniques 7th Style, Man and Sword as One. It penetrated 100 meters, causing mountains and rivers to collapse. The great Tao wailed and the heavenly Tao wept. In a split second, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled as heavy rain poured down. Kill! Yi Qinghan's domineering aura sword. He didn't retreat but advanced instead. He forcefully blasted out his strongest attack. The Flame Ancestor's arm exploded with the power that it should have. It was as though the Flame Ancestor himself was here. The murderous aura spread through the immemorial era as though it came from the immemorial era. It shook Zhong Jingfu's Tao heart and his eyes were filled with fear. Chapter 2645. The might of the ancestral flame arm was too strong. It shook Zhong Jingfu's Tao heart, and fear appeared in his eyes. Killed at a low roar shook the courage of the heroes. The 7-chi long saber was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, the saber's edge struck the opponent's natal immortal sword. The high-grade immortal weapon bent and was almost broken. Wang! Zhong Kuang let out a deep trembling sound, while the immortal sword let out a mournful cry. One was as majestic as an ancient bell, and the other was as ear-piercing as a fierce beast's roar. The two divine weapons shook the void, and the earth was undulating. Qi rushed for thousands of li, and smoke and dust spread out. Puffed up, the two experts flew back like kites with broken strings. They had completely lost control of their bodies. Just as the owner said, the two were fighting with their lives on the line. Once they collided, they would be heavily injured without exception. Whoosh! Thud thud thud. The Yi Qinghan's left hand's web cracked. His legs landed on the ground, and he retreated 100 meters to reduce the impact. The long saber dragged a long ditch on the ground. It was extremely shocking. He landed not far from the valley entrance. His legs were powerless, and he knelt on the ground while coughing blood. Puff boom. Zhong Jingfu was even more miserable. He spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and rolled a few times on the ground. The sword in his hand was bent, and there was an obvious saber mark that almost broke the immortal weapon. Zhong Jingfu's eyes were red, and his eyes were filled with anger. He climbed up from the ground in a panic. How could the emperor's bloodline be weaker than Yi Qinghan's? Huff huff huff, dong dong dong, Zhong Jingfu's heart almost exploded. He stared at the disheveled Yi Qinghan. He recalled Yi Qinghan's explosive attack. The Yen clan's aura was too dense. The ancestral flame arm was one thing, but it was definitely not just the ancestral flame arm. It seemed like there was also the power of humanity, but it was mixed with other techniques. It was a bit different. You're from the Yen clan. Zhong Jingfu was not very sure, but he questioned strongly. Yi Qinghan coldly stood up and wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He disdainfully mocked. You're a dignified emperor's legacy, yet you're splashing dirty water on me after losing. What right do you have to call yourself an emperor? The owner coldly replied, Zhong Jingfu, the heaven-suppressing marquis is the heaven-suppressing marquis that was personally appointed by the celestial nation's celestial emperor, immortal Emperor Qingzun. You are insulting the wisdom of our celestial nation's celestial emperor. Zhong Jingfu's breathing stagnated and he had no words to refute. Even if the immortal emperor was not as good as the primordial immortal emperor, he should be able to recognize the Yen clansman. It doesn't matter if you're from the Yen clan or not, you're going to die today. Boom! Zhong Jingfu directly flung away the deformed immortal sword and waved his hand to take out the emperor's sword. His right hand, which was badly mutilated, held onto the sword hilt. He stared coldly at Yi Qinghan and said coldly, Pull out your emperor's sword. This emperor will crush your bones. Yi Qinghan's eyelids twitched. The key point was that he could not pull out the immemorial yin-yang sword, nor could he use the Yen ancestor arm's 1% advantage. The 9-seed chain ring gourd was not the Taigu emperor's weapon, so it could not contend against a true primordial immortal emperor's weapon. Once his opponent pulled out the great Sun Emperor sword, he would definitely die. Hua! Even if he could not pull out the immemorial yin-yang sword, he could not lose his momentum. Yi Qinghan had used this trick more than once, but he did not know if it would work this time. Yi Qinghan's left hand held onto the immemorial yin-yang sword, while his right hand held onto the sword hilt. The owner really did not know that Yi Qinghan could not pull out the immemorial yin-yang sword. This guy ran in front of so many fourth form experts and pretended to pull out the sword. Who would know that he could not pull out the immemorial yin-yang sword? Moreover, ordinary people could not interfere in a battle between true emperor's inheritors. Yi Qinghan closed his eyes tightly, and a strong intent burst out from his body. He secretly borrowed the power of the Human Dao Emperor Pagoda. The 9 seed chain ring gourd and the Yen ancestor arm exerted force at the same time, and all of them gathered on his right arm. This arm's strength could even lift up a star. Extreme yang energy surged and wrapped around the immemorial yin-yang emperor sword. Hiss hiss hiss, Yi Qinghan took a few deep breaths and pulled fiercely. 1/3 of the immemorial yin-yang sword was unsheathed, and the sword chi soared into the sky. It was as if a primordial immortal emperor had pulled out the sword. The momentum was overwhelming, and it shook Yi Qinghan so much that his blood and chi surged. His face was distorted from the impact. The yin and yang energy swept through the surroundings, and the heaven and earth roared. Hum! The sword's roar shook the 9 heavens, and all creatures in the void ridge wailed. Countless experts were so shocked that they stopped fighting and looked into the depths. Hua! The great Sun Emperor sword in Zhong Jingfu's hand was stimulated by this wisp of sword chi, and it awakened on its own. It unsheathed itself, and its sword aura rose. It stood in midair and looked down at Yi Qinghan. It could slash down at any time, and no one could stop it. The battle situation was no longer under Zhong Jingfu's control, and Yi Qinghan couldn't control it either. PFFF. The 2 great emperor swords clashed with each other, and Yi Qinghan was sent flying to the entrance of the valley. The ground beneath his feet cracked, and blood spurted out from the corner of his mouth. The Yen clan's blood and chi began to run rampant, but it was dispersed by the emperor sword's sword chi, and no one noticed it. Buzz! The immemorial yin-yang sword broke free from Yi Qinghan's restraint, but the Yen Zhu arm and 9 linked ring gourd were secretly helping Yi Qinghan to restrain the immemorial yin-yang sword, causing it to be unable to break free. A wisp of human Dao power engulfed his limbs and bones, causing Yi Qinghan to be rooted to the ground. His black hair danced in the wind like steel needles. Divine light sparkled from the bottom to the top, penetrating the heaven and earth. The pressure permeated the interior of the Jiangnan Immortal Valley, awakening all the experts. Chu Shiliang and his 2 siblings rushed out together, and stood at the entrance of the valley, staring at the battlefield in front. Their eyes were filled with shock. Before the immemorial yin-yang sword was completely unsheathed, Yi Qinghan's veins popped out, and he tried his best to pull it out. However, there seemed to be a suction force inside the immemorial yin-yang sword, and it wasn't something that could be pulled out by human strength. One had to fully understand the immemorial yin-yang immortal classic and the immemorial yin-yang body. Both were indispensable, and Yi Qinghan didn't have either. Pulling out 1/3 of the sword was already his limit. If not for the Yen Zhu arm, he wouldn't even be able to pull out 1/3 of the sword. Yi Qinghan was sweating profusely, wetting the shroud. His sweat fell like rain, and the aura of death was getting closer. Once the great Sun Emperor sword slashed down, he would become cannon fodder. At this moment, even the district mistress couldn't intervene. She didn't have the Taigu Emperor's sword, and the great Sun Emperor sword was awakening on its own. It meant that the great Sun Immortal Emperor was here personally. Who would dare to go against it? Immemorial yin-yang, #1 sword of all ages. The great Sun Emperor sword seemed to have a soul. It looked down at the immemorial yin-yang sword in Yi Qinghan's hand, and its voice reverberated in all directions. The immemorial yin-yang sword wasn't activated. It seemed to be restricted by someone, and without meeting the right person, it wouldn't unleash its true might. Even the awakening of the great Sun Emperor sword didn't make it react at all. Yi Qinghan's legs were twisted under the pressure of the aura, and he almost knelt down. His leg bones were about to break, and his eyes were about to crack, and blood was flowing out. Ah! Yi Qinghan roared towards the sky, and struggled to pull out the immemorial yin-yang sword. The sword's roar shook the heavens, and rushed into the depths of the void. The starry river bloomed, and the day was actually competing with the sun. The voracious wolf giant constellation exploded with brilliant light, comparable to the scorching sun. The astral soul erupted from Yi Qinghan's forehead, connecting him and the voracious wolf giant constellation. Borrowing the power of the stars, the mountains and rivers trembled, and even the void ridge shook. 2/3 of the sword was pulled out, and the district mistress and Zhongjing Fu didn't dare to look at it directly. They turned around to avoid it. Hua hua hua! The starry river surged, and time and space reversed. Yin and yang intersected, and the aura of death hit the ground. This was the true might of the Emperor Sword. Immemorial Yin-Yang Sword, #1 sword of all ages. It was a pity that it didn't meet the Yen Zhu at his peak. Otherwise, who would be the #1 in the world? However, just from this immemorial Yin-Yang Sword, it was clear that this #1 sword of all ages wasn't just empty talk. Chapter 2646. Killed. Yi Qinghan roared angrily. His arms were strong enough to break a star, but he couldn't pull out the immemorial Yin-Yang Sword. His voice shook the sky, and his black hair danced in the air. He couldn't pull out the sword, but his aura, dominance, and murderous aura were enough to shock the ages. Boom! The ground beneath his feet cracked. 2/3 of the sword was pulled out, and the sword radiance penetrated through 10,000 laws. Yin and yang fused together, and the 10-colored radiance shrouded the area. It was magnificent, but extremely frightening. Hua! Yi Qinghan crossed his legs, and his body was almost twisted. The explosive power caused the galaxy to flow in reverse, and the space-time to become chaotic. He can't pull out the immemorial Yin-Yang Sword. In an instant, everyone understood. Zhongjing Fu's eyes flickered, and the murderous aura in his eyes intensified. He hoped that the Great Sun Emperor Sword would be used to kill Yi Qinghan. The owner's face turned solemn. He hoped that Yi Qinghan would pull out the immemorial Yin-Yang Sword, but he was also afraid that he would. Once he pulled it out, who would dare to stop him if he were to proclaim himself emperor? Who could stop him? Chu Shi, Jun, and Xian looked at each other. Their swords traveled through the 9 heavens, and appeared on Yi Qinghan's left, right, and back. They formed a triangular formation and protected him. Yi Qinghan's face and arms were flushed red. His face and arms were flushed with blood, and his expression was hideous. He was in a deadlock with the immemorial Yin-Yang Sword, but he couldn't pull it out. The Great Sun Emperor Sword had its own will, but it didn't attack Yi Qinghan. Instead, it observed from the sky for a long time. Many people were puzzled as to why the Great Sun Emperor Sword didn't attack. Even Zhongjing Fu didn't understand. Wasn't it the best time to kill Yi Qinghan when he couldn't pull out the immemorial Yin-Yang Sword? That the immemorial Yin-Yang Sword's yin and yang intertwined, and the divine radiance pierced through the clouds. The 10-colored divine radiance swam through 2/3 of the sword edge, and suddenly, the radiance soared to the sky again, and kept 2/3 of the sword edge back into the scabbard, completely ending Yi Qinghan's plan. Yi Qinghan's arms were powerless as he spat out blood from the impact of the immemorial Yin-Yang Sword. At this moment, many people didn't understand why the Great Sun Imperial Sword didn't slash down. Only the boss and the Great Sun Imperial Sword understood. When the Yin-Yang Sword was unleashed, the heavens and earth would change and the mountains and rivers would weep. Unless a primordial immortal emperor or a primordial master god appeared, no one would be able to stop the immemorial Yin-Yang Sword. If the Great Sun Imperial Sword forcefully slashed down, it wouldn't be a problem to kill Yi Qinghan. However, it would definitely trigger the immemorial Yin-Yang Sword to awaken on its own. Once the immemorial Yin-Yang Sword was unleashed, the world would be unstoppable. Everyone here would die without exception. Even the Great Sun Imperial Sword wouldn't be lucky enough to escape. The Great Sun Emperor's Sword admitted defeat. It returned to its scabbard and returned to Zhongjing Fu's hand. His intent formed a voice and said, "Let's go. There's no need to fight anymore." Zhongjing Fu immediately became anxious. Yi Qinghan was too barbaric and his murderous aura was too heavy. If he didn't kill him today, he would definitely become a huge threat in the future. Hence, he quickly asked, "Why?" Killing him now is as easy as lifting a finger. The great Sun Emperor Sword was silent for a moment before replying in a low voice. Sigh. You don't understand the primordial yin-yang. Let's go. Whoosh. After speaking, the great Sun Emperor Sword took the initiative to drag Zongjing Fu out of Jiangnan Immortal Valley. Huff huff huff, Yi Qinghan panted heavily. His face was pale, and he was on the verge of collapsing. He never thought that pulling out a sword would exhaust all his energy. Furthermore, it was under the circumstances where he had the help of the Flame Ancestor Arm and the 9 beads chain ring gourd. He couldn't accept this kind of defeat. The district mistress' attitude completely changed. She looked at the primordial yin-yang sword and drooled. However, she knew that she couldn't pull out the primordial yin-yang sword. There was no need to offend Yi Qinghan for this sword. Chu Shi and Jun Xian moved to Yi Qinghan's side and escorted him back to the left mountain of the valley. They looked at the district mistress with a serious expression. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. His eyes were red. He looked at the primordial yin-yang sword in his hand and roared, "Why? Am I not qualified to pull out the sword?" The primordial yin-yang sword didn't respond at all. It was already so terrifying when it was sealed. No one knew how powerful it would be if it was unsheathed. Even the human Dao Emperor Pagoda might not be able to contend against it. At most, both sides would suffer. The district mistress looked at Yi Qinghan's unwilling eyes and knew that he had suffered a blow. She slowly stepped out of the valley and said faintly, "You and Zongjing Fu are the same. You don't understand the primordial yin-yang sword. If it is unsheathed, not only will you die today, we will all die. This Jiangnan Immortal Valley will be razed to the ground. Because you didn't gain its recognition, even if you use the Flame Ancestor Arm to forcefully pull it out, you will still be devoured." Yi Qinghan was silent. No one was more determined than him in the Emperor's heart. But now, he couldn't pull out the primordial yin-yang Emperor Sword even with the Flame Ancestor Arm and the 9-linked gourd. He must be in a bad mood. "I thought that you were recognized by the Taigu Emperor Sword. I believe that the other 4th State people also think so. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to leave alive after suppressing the revered Dragon Marquis. But you won't be so lucky next time. If others want to kill you, as long as they don't use the Taigu Emperor Sword, the primordial yin-yang sword won't be activated," the district mistress said in a deep voice. What she meant was that if he didn't cooperate, he would definitely be hunted down by the other 4th State people. Yi Qinghan shifted his gaze. Looking at that beautiful face, the corner of his mouth raised into a smile. "Even if I don't rely on the primordial yin-yang sword, I'm not someone who can be killed by anyone. But if Ant District Mistress wants me to protect you, then I'll protect you and make you an emperor. But I won't participate in the noble battle for the next 3,000 years. If Ant District Mistress is willing to wait, then go to the Jiangnan Immortal Valley and wait for 3,000 years." Yi Qinghan said firmly. The district mistress wanted Yi Qinghan to protect her, but he also wanted the district mistress to protect the experts of the Kuang sect first. At this moment, he couldn't protect the Kuang sect alone. The district mistress pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, "Then we'll wait for 3,000 years. The noble battle will be at a stalemate for at least 30,000 years. I can afford to wait for 3,000 years. Allow me to bring the experts of the celestial nation here." Yi Qinghan nodded. After watching the district mistress leave, he looked at the 3 Chu Shi siblings who were awakened and said gratefully, "Thank you for coming to help. Now go back and cultivate. Reach the 4th State as soon as possible. Time waits for no one. The Yen tribe and the Chu Shi lineage don't have much time left. There are too many people who are hostile towards us." Sigh. Chu Shijun sighed and clenched his fist helplessly. It's a pity that the Emperor's sword of our Chu Shi lineage's ancestor was lost. The gap between us and the other inheritors is too big. The strongest immortal sword of the Chu Shi lineage was only a fake Taigu Emperor sword. It was the most precious treasure of the clan. "It's okay. We will find it back," Yi Qinghan replied firmly. Chu Shijun nodded. He looked at his younger brother and sister and said softly, "Go into seclusion. From now on, don't come out until you reach the 4th State." Whoosh! The 3 of them left, and the Jiangnan Immortal Valley fell into a dead silence once again. Yi Qinghan slowly sat at the peak of the valley. His body was empty and powerless. He leaned against the green vines tiredly. His eyes were tightly shut, and a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his eyes. This battle had drained him of all his energy, but he had made great progress. Many of the mantras and great sacred arts that he had been unable to comprehend suddenly became clear to him. It was as if he had been enlightened. All he needed to do was to comprehend them for a few more years. Whoosh! Woo-woo-wooed at the immortal spiritual energy between heaven and earth surged and gathered in the Jiangnan Immortal Valley. Yi Qinghan formed a seal with his palms and swallowed the immortal spiritual energy. He borrowed the power of the mountains, rivers, and stars to heal his injured body and refine it. Yi Qinghan bathed in the starlight and immortal light. His face became holy, and his evil aura was restrained. The power in his body multiplied and flowed through his limbs and bones. The power of humanity flowed through every meridian, and his power became pure once again. Chapter 2647. Time flowed and the sun and moon changed. Time flew by like a white steed. Yi Qinghan sat cross-legged on the mountain peak on the left side of the valley, bathing in the celestial light. After an unknown amount of time, the owner brought a large group of experts to the Jiangnan Immortal Valley. They set up camp at a strategic location not far away from the valley, forming an alliance with the Jiangnan Immortal Valley. The Void Ridge was in chaos. Corpses were piled up, and nobles died. The number of casualties was uncountable. The war was in a stalemate. No one seemed to have noticed Yi Qinghan's absence, or rather, he was ignored. The powerful ancient heavenly emperor and the others were incomparably powerful, almost like the primordial immortal emperor when he was young. Only a small number of experts cooperated with him, while the rest relied on themselves to crush the enemy. 300 years passed in the blink of an eye, and the fourth Archean Master God's successor appeared. His first attack was earth-shattering, and his divine might was vast and mighty. This time, it was not an ordinary Stage 2 cultivator, but an Archean Master God's successor who possessed the divine spark of a Master God. His power was almost limitless, and he slaughtered the fourth Archean Master God's successor, the Thunder Primordial Master God's inheritor. The moment he made a move, lightning flashed. The Primordial Master God's inheritors who appeared before all paled in comparison because they did not have the Primordial Master God's divine spark. They only had divine power, but not the Primordial Master God's power. They were not on the same level. The 5 elements Primordial Master God's inheritor Su Tianya, the Divine Will Primordial Master God's inheritor Gu Jiutian, the Great Tao Primordial Master God's inheritor Thunder Emperor, a total of 4 Primordial Master God's inheritors appeared. They were only missing 2 more. The Primordial Immortal Emperor's inheritor, Zhong Zheng Fu, Mu Wu Juefeng, the Eternal Void inheritor, the Heaven Spirit Demon Emperor's inheritor. There were simply too many paragons of the same level, all of them fighting their own battles. Every single one of them was incredibly powerful, decisive in their attacks, forcing tens of thousands of enemies to retreat in defeat. Apart from the inheritances of emperors or the inheritances of archaic gods, no one was a match for them. Back then, the inheritors of the divine generals were not bad either, especially the ancient celestial emperor. He did not protect his daughter, Gu Jiutian, and only wanted to be the emperor himself. The key was that he had fought all the way and had not lost a single battle. Even the inheritors of the divine generals had to avoid him. The heavens and earth were wailing, the mountains and rivers were shaking, and the stars were flashing. Mountains after mountains were taken down, and corpses piled up like mountains. All the forces were losing people, except for the team led by Gu Jiutian. The high priest of Taijiang could control third-degree realm experts as slaves, and his momentum was soaring. He protected Gu Jiutian all the way and fought for hundreds of years. 1,000 years later, in the immortal realm, the heaven-suppressing prefecture's northern divine island, dark clouds covered the sky, lightning flashed, and snow covered the land 3 to 4 meters deep. Jian Chenxue was dressed in white. When the wind blew, the snow moved, and the mountains and rivers danced. There was a trace of firmness on his pale face. He controlled the cold air with his every movement. Wherever he passed, he left no traces on the snow and froze it for 1,000 miles. With a wave of her jade-like hand, a translucent ice sword appeared. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Jian Qinshue's eyes were deep. With a shift of his mind, 10,000 ice swords rushed out from the snow and slashed towards the tribulation clouds. Xiao xiao xiao. 10,000 ice swords clashed with the lightning. The ice swords were sharp and contained Dao arts. They were indestructible and could be compared to the lightning. Boom! Jian Qinshu flew into the sky, and along with the countless ice swords, she slashed into the lightning. Then the tribulation clouds became thicker and thicker, covering the sky and the sun. Only the pure white snow could still emit light. The second tribulation cultivator appeared. Yan Yunbei turned into a cloud and rushed towards the northern sea like a dragon patrolling the sky. The two of them fought with the golden immortal tribulation in two different places. Their battle robes were stained with blood. Their daggers tore through the lightning, and the shockwaves entered their bodies. The golden immortal physique was refined and became stronger. There were a few times when the two of them were blasted into the sea or the ground. After 2 whole months, the two of them succeeded in passing the tribulation. Although they were covered in scars, they smiled at each other. Their aura increased by more than 100 times, and their combat power increased by thousands of times. They became the best in the first realm. The two of them did not immediately leave the immortal world for the Void Ridge. Instead, they sat cross-legged in the snow to comprehend and consolidate the realm of the golden immortal realm. They were accumulating experience. Both of them cultivated the ancient Dao sword technique. They fought in the snow, and the ice swords filled the void. However, Yan Yunbei dodged faster and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yan Yunbei appeared behind Jian Qinshu. With a ruthless sword, he could definitely kill Jian Qinshu. Boom! A thick layer of ice shield appeared behind Jian Qinshu's back, but it could only block for a blink of an eye. However, it was enough. After Yan Yunbei broke through the ice shield, Jian Qinshu had already left the original spot and appeared hundreds of meters away. What welcomed Yan Yunbei was countless ice swords rushing out from the snow. Each ice sword carried the mystery and murderous aura that could kill a first-degree realm practitioner. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yan Yunbei and Jian Qinshu were fighting, and snow was flying all over the sky. After a whole year, the two of them stood firmly in the first realm. They did not lose to the veteran first realm experts. As soon as the battle ended, the tribulation clouds appeared in the sky again. Yichen Tian soared into the sky and attacked the tribulation clouds. However, in less than 3 days, a second figure rushed out of the void. It was a rainbow-colored snake that looked like a divine dragon. Medusa had broken through to the first realm. The thunder clouds flashed and shook the mountains and rivers. The majestic power of heaven and earth suppressed all living things. 9 Remoteness Master, who was standing in the inner sect of Kuang Fu, smiled with relief. He could forget about breaking through to the first realm. Without Yi Qinghan, he could not even break through to the little spirit immortal realm. However, he was happier than those in the fourth state. He was satisfied that he had cultivated Yi Qinghan and Emperor Yi in this life, and that the two of them had led such a team. He could die without regrets. It's a pity that I'm old. Otherwise, I really want to see what a king battle looks like, 9 Remoteness Master whispered. At this moment, a figure appeared behind 9 Remoteness Master. Her aura was restrained. If she did not speak, 9 Remoteness Master would not have known that she had arrived. If you want to see a king battle, I can bring you there. Her voice was cold and emotionless. Her eyes were emotionless and calm. However, when she spoke, 9 Remoteness Master's hair stood on end. He felt a chill down his spine. 9 Remoteness Master turned around and said in shock, "Minx, you've cultivated the heartless Tao and succeeded." Heartless, selfless, desireless, impotent. Yi Mingxi was less immature and more heartless. Her eyes were deep, and no one could tell what she was thinking. She only replied coldly, "Yes, I've succeeded." "Your brother?" Yi Mingxi's aura was too terrifying. 9 Remoteness Master's cultivation was too low, and he feared Yi Mingxi from the bottom of his soul. Yi Mingxi did not even move, but her body appeared outside Kuang Fu's camp. When she passed by Jian Chenxue, she did not even say a word and walked into the depths of the North Sea. Mengxi, what have you done? Jian Chenxue was shocked and angry. She did not expect Yi Mingxi to not stop cultivating the Heartless Tao. Now, she had really stepped into the Heartless Tao and was about to undergo the tribulation. Sister-in-law, I can still control myself, Yi Mingxi replied indifferently. Then, she rushed into the North Sea without looking back. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared without a trace. Chapter 2648. Yi Mingxi's voice was cold and emotionless. However, her aura was extremely powerful. She could threaten the lives of Jian Chenxue and Yan Yunbei even before the heavenly tribulation. Yan Yunbei's face was solemn. He did not expect Yi Mingxi to reach this stage. The long wait was not scary, but she was too young and her state of mind was unstable. This led to her entering the Ruthless Path. Now, she had formed the Ruthless Path seal. Should we inform our husband to come back and take a look? Jian Chenxue asked helplessly. Yan Yunbei was mature and steady. He thought carefully. Those in the fourth state did not allow them to stay in the immortal world. How could he let Yi Qinghan come back now? After she passes the heavenly tribulation, we will go to the Void Ridge together, Yan Yunbei said in a low voice. In the North Sea, tribulation clouds rolled. The Ruthless Path was not tolerated by heaven and earth. The Thunder Tribulation was more terrifying than Yan Yunbei's and Jian Chenxue's. However, Yi Mingxi did not even frown. It seemed that she did not care about her life at all. Boom! Lightning struck from the dark clouds. Huge waves surged in all directions, drowning everything. The waves even reached the North Sea island. The waves even reached 1,000 meters high, crossing the mountains and rushing into the interior of the North Sea island. Yi Mingxi did not even dodge. She waved her hand and grabbed the lightning. The Ruthless Path seal was attached to her palm. She kneaded the lightning into a ball of light energy. The sharp energy flowed through her limbs and bones, shattering her flesh and making her blood drip. However, she was not afraid. Boom! The ball of lightning energy was thrown into the depths of the tribulation clouds. It collided with the lightning and rushed into the galaxy. Yi Mingxi rushed into the tribulation clouds. She wanted to crush the clouds. The Ruthless Path roared, causing thousands of Daos to tremble. Endless mysterious path covered her body. Divine light shot into the sky and formed a 10-light barrier. No matter how the lightning attacked, it could not break through her defense. Destroy! Yi Mingxi formed a seal with her palms. The Ruthless Path seal blasted out from her palms. It formed a palm print with a murderous aura. It went against the sky and the sea. A weak figure could block the sky and the sea. Like father, like son, like wolf siblings. Although Yi Mingxi and Yi Qinghan's souls were not blood-related siblings, they had been influenced by each other and were completely assimilated. The two of them were truly each more ruthless than the other. Bang! Thousands of lightning bolts clashed with the sky-covering palm print. The sea was shaken and sunk by dozens of meters, and the waves crashed in all directions. Crack, 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 crack. The lightning actually broke apart. Yi Mingxi forcefully ascended to the heavens, but the tribulation clouds seemed to be enraged. Countless lightning bolts struck down, shattering the emotionless Tao seal. Yi Mingxi was blasted into the sea. Yi Mingxi slammed her palm into the sea. Her body soared into the sky once again as she continued to charge towards the tribulation clouds. Once, twice. Yi Mingxi was blasted down countless times. The more she fought, the braver she became. Yan Yunbei and Jian Chenxue were stunned. On the other side, although Yi Qintian and Medusa were heaven-defying, their lightning tribulations were weak compared to the lightning tribulations here. The two of them felt that their lightning tribulations were not scary. They were much more relaxed. Half a month later, Medusa and Yi Qintian successfully passed the tribulations. Yi Mingxi was blasted down more than 1,000,000 times. Her body was destroyed, and the Ruthless Path was rebuilt. Her cultivation was becoming more and more heaven-defying. Her Ruthless Path was becoming purer and purer. She had almost reached perfection. Once she broke through to the Big Brother realm, Yi Mingxi's combat power might be as crazy and violent as Yi Qinghan. The heartless Tao was not tolerated by the heavens and earth. Yi Mingxi had fought against the lightning tribulation for half a year. Her entire person seemed to have merged with the heartless Tao. There was no aura on her body at all. She was completely emotionless. This might be the legendary saint. The lightning tribulations seemed to be tired. It could not kill Yi Mingxi. Instead, Yi Mingxi fought bravely and approached the tribulation clouds several times. Ruthless path seal lawless. Whoosh! Yi Mingxi exploded. She formed a seal with her palms. Her eyes were really lawless. All laws and principles became illusions. Once they were broken, they would be broken. She crushed everything as easily as breaking dry weeds. She swept through the lightning and blasted into the depths of the tribulation clouds. Boom! That there seemed to be stars exploding in the depths of the tribulation clouds that covered the sky. The airwaves spread for countless miles. It was like a master in the fourth state had exploded with a peak attack. The tribulation clouds dispersed. The stars shone brightly in the sky. The evil aura was completely dispersed. Whoosh! Yi Mingxi's celestial body was bright. Her celestial spiritual power evolved into a celestial robe. It emitted a dense celestial light and had an oppressive aura. Even Jian Chenxue and Yan Yunbei felt the terrifying pressure. Jian Chenxue was the mother of the world. Even Emperor Yi had to give in to her. Since she was young, she had been taking care of Wang Shi and Yi Mingxi. She was not afraid of Yi Mingxi now, but she was very concerned about her emotions and Dao heart. Jian Chenxue took a deep breath and asked seriously, "Mingxi, are you okay?" Yi Mingxi might not care about what others thought, but could she really be emotionless? This sister-in-law was like a mother and a sister. She had been taking care of her daily life. How could she not have any feelings for her? Sister-in-law, the ruthless Tao is not as scary as you think. Don't worry. Let's go to the Void Ridge. I don't need to settle down. Although Yi Mingxi was emotionless, there were still some emotions in her words. It was just that she suppressed them. Phew! Jian Chenxue heard this and could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. She reached out and held Yi Mingxi's lily-white hand. She sighed and said, "Ah, you fool. Actually, you don't have to take this step at all. Our husband will also worry about you." Yi Mingxi's fingertips trembled slightly. She glanced at Jian Chenxue from the corner of her eyes. She wanted to break free, but when she saw the worry in her eyes, she finally let her hold on and did not break free. At this moment, Yi Tian and Medusa had only settled down a little. However, their combat power could not be underestimated. When they saw that Yi Mingxi had finished her tribulation, they immediately surrounded her. "Auntie, you are actually so much stronger than me. I called myself Great God Tian in vain. I feel so inferior now," Yi Tian said, pretending to be sad. Although Yi Tian was Yi Qinghan's son, he did not have many advantages. In comparison, many young people in the Kuang Manor were stronger than him. Now Yi Mingxi, Lin Wutian and the others were far stronger than him. They could even kill him instantly. Yi Mingxi saw that her nephew was deliberately trying to make her happy. She wanted to comfort him with a smile, but she could not. She only replied coldly, "It is very embarrassing." Yi Tian was speechless. Cough, cough. Medusa, Yan Yunbei and the others coughed dryly. Then Yan Yunbei said, "Let's go to the Void Ridge. The noble battle has been going on for almost 1,000 years. I wonder how the Kuang Manor is doing now. The 5 of us should at least be able to fight." Yi Mingxi looked back indifferently at the Kuang Manor's camp. Nine Nether was still standing at the gate, looking worried. She asked crisply, "Senior, do you still want to watch the noble battle? I can take you there." Nine Nether was stunned. He wanted to agree, but Jian Chenxue immediately stopped him. "No, if my husband sees you being taken to the Void Ridge, he will be very angry." Yan Yunbei also nodded. He did not agree to let Nine Netherlord go to the Void Ridge. After all, he was too weak. The aftermath could kill him countless times. Nine Netherlord did not want them to worry, so he said with a smile, "It's okay. I won't go to the Void Ridge, but you must all come back." Yan Yunbei cupped his fists and bowed. Then, he took the lead and rushed into the void. Swoosh, swoosh, swooshed the five of them rushed into the void as fast as lightning. Yi Chen Tian and Medusa were gradually left behind. Yi Mingxi looked calm, but her speed was much faster than the others. She did not even have a weapon, but her aura was overwhelming. Chapter 2649. The battle between Noble Plane and Noble Plane was like a fleeting cloud. In a flash, 1,000 years had passed. Yi Qinghan didn't think that he would be in seclusion for 1,000 years. Moreover, he hadn't woken up yet. In this 1,000 years, he didn't comprehend other techniques. He focused on comprehending the 9 levels of human Tao. With the support of the human Tao Emperor Pagoda, he successfully grasped the 5th level of human Tao. The first level was derivation. The second level was nirvana. The third level was void. The fourth level was human soul. The fifth level was divine annihilation. Unfortunately, he stopped at the 5th level. The 6th level was immortal fall. The 7th level was emperor annihilation. The 8th level was world sculpting. The 9th level was creation. At the 8th level, it was to shatter the void and reconstruct the world of nothingness. It was to create a world that wasn't inferior to the immortal world. It was to kill primordial immortal emperors. Everything was void. At the 9th level, time, space, the 5 elements, and the myriad laws lost their meaning. It could be called the ancestor, creating the world with a wave of his hand. However, the 9th level was only a virtual concept. Yi Qinghan didn't even know what the 9th level of profound meaning was. This was because he could only reach the 6th level of the pagoda. He couldn't cultivate the 6th level of profound meaning. In 1,000 years, he had comprehended 5 layers of ultimacies and over 300 kinds of martial arts. On top of that, he had also combined the ultimacies of the 300 martial arts into a single martial art, which was named the God-slaying immortal vanquishing grand martial art. As soon as he executed it, the weather would change and the mountains and rivers would change color. In this 1,000 years, the owner had woken up a few times because of invaders. However, they were all killed by her alone. Many great powers had their eyes on Jiangnan Immortal Valley. However, this place was occupied by 2 great experts, the owner and Yi Qinghan. Both of them were extremely powerful and could fight against the strongest 4th form. Even if a single power coveted it, they couldn't do anything. On this day, Yi Qinghan slowly opened his eyes. His 2nd-degree immortal soul was extremely powerful. With a flash of his divine sense, it covered 1,000 miles. His terrifying aura was restrained in his chest. His majestic aura surged through the mountains and rivers, directly waking up the owner who was far away. The current Yi Qinghan was no longer who he was 1,000 years ago. After 1,000 years of accumulation, he never slacked off. His understanding of the abstruse divine arts had increased by a few levels, and his battle prowess was also several times stronger. Now that he was fighting Zhong Zhengfu again, he didn't need the immemorial yin-yang sword to be in an invincible position. The owner stood up on the mountain peak and looked down at Yi Qinghan from afar. She was stunned by the look in his eyes. It wasn't that she had never seen a master in her life, but she had never seen such a look in his eyes. It was fierce, evil, and somewhat righteous. It gave people a feeling of reverence and fear. "You're awake? Do you still want to continue your seclusion?" The owner looked into the distance and asked in a crisp voice. Yi Qinghan's eyes were like torches. His figure flashed and appeared in front of the owner. He grinned and replied, "I want to kill someone, but it's not the time yet. When the entire Kuang Manor comes out of seclusion, I'll help you wipe out wherever you want to go. If you continue your seclusion, you'll miss out on a good show. The experience gained from other people's battles is far more than what we gain from seclusion." The owner took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Coming out of nowhere is a good show. And owner, you're so impatient. Where's the calm state of mind you had when you teased me?" Yi Qinghan looked down from above and raised the owner's chin. He looked straight into her eyes and asked. The owner was stunned by Yi Qinghan's actions. Then, she reacted and couldn't help but fly into a rage. She waved her hand and slapped Yi Qinghan fiercely. "You bastard, how dare you tease me? I'll cripple your claws." The owner roared hysterically. This slap was filled with true fury and could kill an ordinary second-degree realm cultivator. Wah! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and he distanced himself from the owner. He stood in the distance and said indifferently, "That year when you teased me, you even stripped me of my clothes. I'm a vengeful person. I'm giving you face by not stripping you of your clothes this time." Boom! The owner's attack missed and she clasped her palms together. The stars reversed and she slapped out fiercely towards Yi Qinghan. "You bastard, that's not what you said back then." The void in front of them collapsed and the energy caught up with Yi Qinghan. However, he didn't dodge. Instead, he crossed his hands and the energy in his body poured out. His aura soared and was extremely domineering. God slaying and immortal vanquishing. Boom! A large palm print appeared in front of Yi Qinghan. It went against the void and clashed with the owner's energy. The void collapsed completely and a mountain was swallowed up. That was then and this is now. Today, I came out of seclusion to seek revenge. An owner, anger is harmful to your body. Be careful that wrinkles appear on your beautiful face from anger. Yi Qinghan casually slapped the owner's palm print. The two remarkable powers clashed and the energy swept across the mountains and rivers, shaking the heaven and earth. Boomed at the two palms collided and flames soared into the sky. Divine rays shot in all directions. Wah! The two remarkable powers were equally matched. However, Yi Qinghan used all his strength while the owner only used 80% of her strength. Boom! Bam bam bam! Yi Qinghan was smashed into the ground by the force of the qi and was forced to retreat dozens of steps. However, he wasn't in a sorry state. He steadied himself and placed his hands behind his back. He calmly said, "Anti-workshop owner, I've said it before." The owner crushed the void under her feet and her body swayed. Although she didn't retreat, she could see that Yi Qinghan's improvement was exaggerated. He could be compared to a person in the fourth state. If he used the 9-linked gourd, it was hard to tell who would win. Kill gods and destroy immortals? The owner frowned. She could see Yi Qinghan's ambition from this name. In the future, the Yen clan and the primordial bloodline would fight again and it wouldn't be a small battle. "You want to take revenge for the Yen clan?" The owner asked in a low voice. Yi Qinghan smiled calmly and plucked a leaf. With a light flick, the space was cut open, but the leaf was also shattered into dust. "I am like this leaf. I can take revenge, but I will also die without leaving any trace. Do you think I will be so impulsive?" Yi Qinghan asked. "Then why did you name the remarkable power you comprehended this way?" The owner asked in a muffled voice. Yi Qinghan shrugged and replied indifferently, "Because this ability is meant to kill the primordial god race and the immortal spirits. Even if I don't kill them, they will force me to kill them sooner or later. I actually hope that Auntie won't be my enemy. After all, you know me well. I will definitely take revenge, but I will also repay kindness. You teased me and I will repay the kindness you and immortal Emperor Qingzun gave me. Therefore, I will ensure that you become an emperor. If you still want to be my enemy, it would be too unwise." Hiss hiss hiss. The owner took a few deep breaths and then exhaled. She stared at Yi Qinghan. She could see that he didn't just want to protect her, he wanted her to become emperor. "I have the primordial bloodline. Aren't you afraid that the hatred can't be erased and will sprout and take root?" The owner reminded. Yi Qinghan was silent for a while and said seriously, "If you can't even control your own will and want to become emperor, then it will be very laughable. I am confident that I can control my hands and brain, but I am afraid that you can't. Besides, how much hatred can there be between the primordial bloodline and the Yen clan? The ones with the most hatred are the primordial god race and the primordial immortal race. His Highness Gu Jiutian isn't afraid, so what are you afraid of?" The owner thought for a while and couldn't help but smile. She shook her head and said no more. "Let's fight in the depths. I want to see how strong you are to dare to tease me at this time. If you are defeated by me, just you wait," the owner warned provocatively. Yi Qinghan smiled confidently. His figure flashed as he took the lead and stepped into the depths. he said proudly. "If I lose, you can punish me however you want. If I win, I will let you experience the feeling of being stripped naked." Boom! "You are courting death." The owner was furious. She pushed the stars with her fist, reversing time and space, and directly appeared behind Yi Qinghan. Chapter 2650. The owner had been noble all his life and had never been defiled. Today he was teased twice by Yi Qinghan. How could he not be angry? The two chased each other and turned into two beams of light that rushed into the deepest part of the Void Ridge. After a few days, they arrived at a remote area of the Void Ridge. Further out was the endless void and deep cliffs. The entire Void Ridge floated in the void. Boom! Yi Qinghan stopped at the edge of the mountain. When he saw the angry face of the owner rushing over, he couldn't help but laugh in schadenfreude. "You're still laughing? You won't be able to laugh later." Boom, boom, boom. Whoosh! The owner mobilized the power of the stars and swept it in all directions, sealing off all escape routes. One of his supernatural powers was so powerful that the stars moved. Open! Yi Qinghan's aura was like a rainbow. He stepped on the mountain peak and punched with his right fist with endless power. He wanted to break through the mountains and rivers. His supernatural powers were attached and his aura swallowed up the mountains and rivers. Boom! The two of them fought crazily without showing any mercy. Every punch and palm carried the power of a god-slaying god. A single mistake could lead to death, but what they wanted was this feeling of death. Only then would they have a breakthrough in their combat experience. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Yi Qinghan and the owner of the workshop escaped into the sky and the ground. They even left the Void Ridge and entered the void. Some nobles wanted to hide here, but they were scared out of their wits and didn't dare to stay any longer. Flames and aurora intertwined and the stars changed their trajectories. The two broke through the void and entered the depths of the Milky Way. Some meteors fell and were used as weapons by the two. They were shattered in the blink of an eye. Yi Qinghan's body and every muscle and bone were killing weapons. Yanzu's right arm was especially powerful. Once it exploded, even the owner had to retreat. The owner kept looking for Yi Qinghan's weakness and flaws. He attacked mercilessly as if he really wanted to kill him. Yi Qinghan was almost killed a few times, but his powerful close combat skills allowed him to escape perfectly. He kept improving his defense and attack, and his battle power was increasing rapidly. At the same time, Yi Qinghan was also looking for the owner's weak points and weaknesses. He attacked mercilessly, and the battle lasted for 10 years. They constantly shifted positions until they arrived at a huge dead planet. There was no air, and even sound could not travel. However, the two of them had extraordinary control over their Tao. They could still fight here, and could even pierce through the earth and create a chasm of 10,000 miles. Yi Qinghan was no match for the owner, but he was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. The energy in his body was limitless, and even the owner was almost out of energy. He was panting and his face was red. Yi Qinghan didn't have it easy either. Even after mobilizing the power of the human Tao Emperor Pagoda, he was still so tired that he couldn't even straighten his back. Huff, huff, huff. Yi Qinghan panted heavily. He leaned on his legs and bent over to look at the owner. With an exhausted expression, he said, "Anti-owner, I didn't expect you to last longer than me." The head of the workshop, Jian Su, was leaning against a large rock. He was so tired that he could barely stand. He looked at Yi Qinghan angrily and cursed, "Little bastard, if this consort didn't teach you a lesson today, you would have overturned the heavens." Teach me a lesson? If there's no other way, why don't we use the sky as our blanket and the earth as our bed and change the way we fight? Yi Qinghan mocked disdainfully. The owner was so angry that the hand holding the sword trembled. He wanted nothing more than to stab Yi Qinghan with hundreds of holes. "Idiot! It's not fun to anger me." The owner straightened her body and pointed her sword at the stars. She instantly controlled billions of miles of stars. Endless power poured into her body. Yi Qinghan's pupils shrank. He didn't expect this woman to be even more ruthless than him. She actually used a forbidden technique that she couldn't control. The strongest attack of the starry sky reversal. Once fully controlled, this attack was equivalent to a peak primordial divine general's all-out attack. It might even surpass it and be second only to a primordial immortal emperor. Sigh. Yi Qinghan wanted to admit his mistake and stop the owner from going crazy, but she was already like an arrow on the bow. He had no choice but to attack. His hair stood on end. He formed a seal with both hands. The seal of the 9-ringed gourd bloomed with divine light. The 9 gourds opened at the same time. The flame ancestral arm was activated. His black hair danced wildly. He looked like a primordial war god himself. Yi Qinghan planted his feet on the ground and sprouted roots. He gripped the chaotic frenzy with both hands. It had evolved to the level of a primordial sacred weapon. Its chaotic power grew stronger and stronger. The blade met the light of the stars. God slaying and immortal vanquishing. Yi Qinghan used his full strength this time. He raised his blade and slashed at the owner. He wanted to defeat her first. Boom. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The immortal sword fell. The 9 heavens collapsed. The sword energy tore through the rocky ground. Smoke and dust rose. Bang. Crack crack crack. The immortal sword landed on Yi Qinghan's upper hand and clashed with the primal chaos saber billet. In a split second, the oars under Yi Qinghan's feet were shattered, and the shroud was crushed into powder by the force. His body sank deep into the ground as he faced the galaxy against the sky Grand Theurgy with his saber naked. Ada Yi Qinghan roared. His blade shattered the shackles. His left arm was split open. His skin was torn and his flesh was mangled. His golden body was dyed red. Boom! A deep abyss appeared on the ground. Yi Qinghan was smashed directly into the depths of the dead star. The huge dead star almost collapsed. Some rocks broke free from their bindings and rushed into the void, forming huge meteors. Yi Qinghan's counterattack was also terrifying. The terrifying force blasted the owner into the void. She flipped continuously in the air and lost control. At this moment, Yi Qinghan dragged the 7-foot heavy blade into the abyss. He held his blade horizontally. The friction between the two sides of the abyss caused flames to rise. Even so, he could not stop his falling body. Suddenly, there was a vertical crack in the depths of the abyss. It looked like a huge hole. Yi Qinghan's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He grabbed the hole directly. His fingers were almost torn off. Boom! Yi Qinghan supported himself with his legs on both sides of the abyss. His left hand held his blade and stabbed it into the mountain opposite him. He exerted his body and rolled into the vertical crack. Once he entered the crack, he realized that there was another world here. It stretched on endlessly and there seemed to be traces of human polishing. Yi Qinghan took out the immemorial yin-yang jade to illuminate the dark cave. He realized that it was blood red inside. Moreover, this was not a natural red. Yi Qinghan squatted down and rubbed the rock with his hand. He realized that the red rock actually had energy fluctuations. Moreover, it was very familiar. He put his finger on the tip of his tongue and licked it. He realized that the red material was actually blood. Yi Qinghan's pupils constricted. He looked into the depths cautiously. There were people alive here. They must be peerless ancient experts, just like Su Jiuling, who was suppressed by the human Tao Emperor's pagoda. Blood dyed the internal crack red. Those who were not in the fourth form of the ancient era would not have such a majestic amount of qi and blood. The human Tao Emperor's pagoda appeared on Yi Qinghan's forehead. He held the 9-chain gourd in his hand and walked deeper into the crack. After walking for a long time, the crack seemed to be endless. He had no idea why there was such a passage in the interior of the star. Several days later, the crack in the star suddenly became much bigger. A cave about 100 meters tall appeared. There was no light inside, but Yi Qinghan could feel that there was a terrifying person hiding inside. Whether dead or alive, he must have been a hero during the ancient era. He might even be the corpse of a primordial immortal emperor. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Thump thump thump. Yi Qinghan's heart was pounding. He activated the immemorial yin-yang jade with his immortal spiritual force. The interior of the jade shone brightly and a palace-like place appeared. Several corpses were lying on the stone floor. One of them was sitting cross-legged on the main seat. He was holding something in his hand. The pressure was terrifying. Chapter 2651. Dong dong dong, Yi Qinghan's heart was about to explode. The danger here was no less than the Crying Ghost Ridge or the Demon Ceiling Cave. Some immemorial runes were engraved on the walls of this underground palace. Corpses were scattered all over the place. All of them were from the immemorial era. Their corpses were preserved until now without any signs of decay. One could see how terrifying their cultivation was. Huff huff huff, Yi Qinghan panted heavily. He walked closer and saw that the corpse sitting in the center had a sword in its chest. It was the Taigu Emperor's sword. The token on his waist flashed with Emperor's might. His eyes were filled with unwillingness and killing intent. This gaze could kill an ordinary third-degree realm expert. Those with weaker mental states would either die or go crazy. This gaze was too fierce. Immemorial, immortal Emperor's corpse. Yi Qinghan clenched his fists and took a few steps back. He didn't understand the history of the immemorial era. Even if he saw the token, he didn't know which supreme existence this immortal Emperor's corpse belonged to. After a long time, Yi Qinghan readjusted his mental state and suppressed his fear. He slowly walked towards the immortal Emperor's corpse and carefully observed the Emperor's sword. After searching for a long time, he realized that there were words engraved on the back of the sword. He took the immemorial yin-yang jade and took a closer look. The word Liang was written on it. Chu Shiliang's immortal sword? Yi Qinghan's pupils shrank. He muttered to himself in astonishment, "It can't be so coincidental, right? This is immortal Emperor Chu Shiliang's emperor's sword?" Yi Qinghan didn't dare to be sure. He squatted down and looked at the items in the corpse's hands. One in each hand. At this moment, the treasures were dim, as if the blood had congealed. Before the immortal emperor died, he opened his hands slightly. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to see what was in his hands. Yi Qinghan was a little unsure. These things seemed to be human eyeballs, but the blood had congealed for too long. It was impossible to determine whose eyeballs this pair of eyeballs belonged to. However, if this emperor's sword belonged to immortal Emperor Chu Shiliang, then this pair of eyeballs might belong to Ancestor Yen. Just as Yi Qinghan was focusing all his attention on the ancient corpse, a pair of eyes appeared from the darkness and stared at Yi Qinghan. The eyes were clear and cold, and the aura was restrained. Even Yi Qinghan did not notice that there was someone behind him. A ferocious glint flashed in his eyes as he slowly drew his sword. Just as he was about to slash at Yi Qinghan felt a wisp of sword light appear behind him. He immediately drew his saber and slashed backward without even thinking. His murderous aura filled the cave, causing it to rumble incessantly. "Who is it?" Yi Qinghan shouted angrily. He thought it was the boss, but the sword in the man's hand emitted a familiar aura. It was not the weapon used by the boss. Boom! The sharp sword collided with craziness, and the aura of the Yen clan entered Yi Qinghan's body. The 5 supreme divine swords of the Yen clan, Heaven Sword, Earth Sword, Emperor Sword, Human Sword, and Reincarnation Sword. The Heaven Sword was in Yi Qinghan's hand, and Reincarnation Shakyamuni had one. This human sword was actually in the hands of this person. 1. The human Tao Emperor Pagoda was awakened by the aura of the human sword, and once again appeared on its own. The light illuminated the entire place, and that person's face could be clearly seen. He looked to be about 27 or 28 years old, and his attire was actually from the immemorial era. His cultivation had actually reached the 3rd realm, and the sword in his hand was indeed the human sword of the Yen clan. Yen clan member. The 4th person was from the Yen clan, and a very pure expert from the Yen clan. The first was naturally Reincarnation Shakyamuni, the second was Yi Qinghan, the third was Hua Lingtian, and the 4th was the person in front of them. Yen clan member. Yi Qinghan was shocked. He did not expect to see someone from the immemorial era who was still alive. Moreover, he was so young. That person clearly did not expect to meet someone from the Yen clan here. When he saw the human Tao Emperor Pagoda, He immediately hugged his sword with both hands, knelt on one knee, and said respectfully, "Yen clan's imparting elder's successor, Yi Chunxing, greets the young master." The imparting elder was in charge of the human sword, and the emperor's sword was in the hands of the Yen emperor. In the last battle, even the emperor's sword was lost. Even if one knew that it was in the Crying Ghost Ridge, it would not be easy to find it. Yi Qinghan's eyelids twitched. He did not expect this scene, but he quickly reacted. He immediately helped Yi Chunxing up and asked in a low voice, "Is there anyone else from the Yen clan who is still alive?" Yi Chunxing shook his head, his eyes filled with anger. He stared at the primordial immortal emperor's corpse and said angrily, "The remaining elders of the Yen clan brought me to hide in the Death Star. They just wanted to prolong their lives and leave behind their inheritance. Who would have thought that the primordial demon emperor would come here? Even though he was severely injured, he killed the elders with a wave of his hand. He wanted to kill me as well, but I don't know why he sealed me. I died not long after I was sealed. By chance, I woke up 100,000 years ago and cultivated bitterly to reach my current level. I didn't dare to leave without permission all these years. At most, I would go to the Void Ridge to search for resources and then come back. I didn't expect young master to come here." Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. Since there were elders who brought the Yen clan to hide in the Death Star, there might be others who were still alive. Perhaps they were living in the Death Star, enduring the boredom and death, but they were still alive. At this moment, a few crisp sounds came from the crack. There was a large amount of spiritual qi hidden in this space. It should have been brought here by Yi Chunxing. Sounds could be transmitted. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. He immediately pointed at the corpses lying on the ground and said, "Put on the shroud immediately. It can block the Yen clan's qi and blood from leaking out." Yi Chunxing was already in the third realm and was the successor of the imparting elder. His cultivation was not weak. He heard the sound before Yi Qinghan heard it. He immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed to one of the corpses. "Elder Lin, I didn't mean to desecrate your body, but I have no choice now. Please forgive me." After speaking, Yi Chunxing immediately took off the bloody clothes on the corpse and put them on. The aura on his body was quickly suppressed. After a while, a slender figure appeared in the ancient inner palace. Her eyes were more dazzling than the stars. The psychic pearl in her hand lit up the space. "I thought you were dead. I didn't expect there to be another world here." The owner snorted. Yi Qinghan's mouth twitched. He did not refute. He pointed at the sword on the primordial immortal emperor's corpse and asked, "Is this Chu Shiliang's emperor sword?" The qi and blood of these corpses had dried up. It was impossible to tell their identities. Only the primordial immortal emperor's body still had emperor aura. His eyes were especially terrifying. Only then did the owner notice that there were a few corpses in the underground palace. There was also another living person. His eyes narrowed. He stared at Yi Chunxing and said, "He's from the Yen clan." Buzz. Yi Chunxing held the human sword. His eyes flashed with killing intent. He was in the third realm, but that was only in the third realm of the primordial immortal realm. It was completely different from the current third realm. Yi Qinghan pressed down on Yi Chunxing's wrist. He shook his head and said, "It's okay. I trust her. She knows my identity. If she wanted to betray me, she would have done so long ago." The owner was shocked by Yi Chunxing's killing intent. His eyes were filled with vigilance. He realized that Yi Chunxing's third realm was not the same as his current third realm. This person's cultivation method and cultivation method were the same as the primordial immortal realm. This meant that Yi Chunxing was not related to the current immortal realm. Chapter 2652. Yi Chunxing was someone who did not belong to this era. Although he was very young, he belonged to the immemorial era. The owner looked down on Yi Chunxing a second ago, but in the next moment, she became much more vigilant. Yi Qinghan stood between the two of them. He didn't want them to fight, so he changed the topic. "Stop fighting amongst yourselves. Let's take a look at the origins of this primordial immortal emperor's corpse and this sword." The district mistress deeply breathed in and maintained a certain distance from Yi Qinghan and Yi Chunxing because she felt quite fearful. If it was just Yi Qinghan by himself, it would be fine, but now that there was the Yen clan's legatee, the two of them working together would definitely be able to kill her. Yi Qinghan shook his head and took the initiative to step back, allowing the owner to go to the corpse herself. The owner slowly came to the corpse and squatted down. She carefully observed the sword on the corpse and stared at the word Liang on the back of the sword. Then she looked at the material and the faint pressure. She confirmed the identity of the Emperor's sword. That's right. It is Chu Shiliang's Life Emperor's sword, Liang Emperor's sword. The owner did not turn around. After confirming the identity of the Liang Emperor's sword, she looked at the corpse's waist token. However, she did not dare to flip the corpse. Even if the immemorial immortal emperor was dead, no one could profane him. Perhaps even if immortal Emperor Qingzun and the other 4 immortal emperors appeared, they might not dare to flip the corpse. The emperor's aura was vast and mighty. Even though the emperor's blood had dried up, there was still an aura that did not belong to the immemorial ancient immortals or immemorial ancient gods. It was a demonic aura that belonged to the demon emperor. There was only one demon emperor among the 12 immemorial immortal emperors. This corpse is the Heaven Spirit Demon Emperor, one of the 12 immemorial immortal emperors. If I'm not wrong, the eyes in his hand should belong to the Yen ancestor. When he and the other immemorial immortal emperors worked together to kill the Yen ancestor, they dug out the Yen ancestor's eyes. However, when the Heaven Spirit Demon Emperor dug out the Yen ancestor's eyes, Immortal Emperor Chu Shiliang pierced his heart with a sword. The Heaven Spirit Demon Emperor escaped here before he died. The district master's expression was solemn and his eyes shone brightly as he deduced. Although Yi Qingxing was from the primordial era, he knew very little about the primordial era. He was only in his teens at the end of the primordial war. In addition, he had been sealed for many years, so his actual age was not very high. Therefore, he did not refute the owner's speculation. Yi Qinghan clenched his fists and stared at the eye in the demon Thearka's hand and the immemorial young emperor sword on his chest. He had to obtain both of these items. Yi Qinghan stepped forward and was about to draw his sword when he was stopped by the owner. Are you crazy? You even dared to touch the corpse of a supreme ancient immortal emperor? Aren't you afraid of retribution? The owner asked angrily. Boom! Yi Qinghan stretched out his right hand, and the might of the flame ancestor was activated, releasing a faint light. He then replied in a low voice, The one who pulled out the sword is not me, but the flame ancestor. The flame ancestor can even kill emperors. Why can't he touch the corpse? I advise you not to touch it or you will regret it. The supreme ancient immortal emperor will definitely lay down his corpse before his death. Anyone who blasphemes against him will suffer the most terrifying attack. You and I cannot resist it. Even immortal Emperor Qingzun and the immortal Dragon Emperor cannot resist it. The district master was still firm in his will, blocking Yi Qinghan, not willing to let him take the risk. Young master, it's better not to touch the corpse. It's too dangerous. You have not seen how terrifying the supreme ancient immortal emperor is. A few elders of my Yen clan couldn't resist him even when he was on the verge of death. With a wave of his hand, a strand of his will was enough to destroy this star. Yi Qingxing reminded respectfully. As for the elders of the Yen clan, even if they were ordinary elders, they would at least be at the 3rd level, which was equivalent to the current 4th level. But in front of the heavily injured supreme ancient immortal emperor, they were nothing more than ants. Even if such a person died, he would still be the heavens. Nobody would dare to profane him. However, people like Yi Qinghan did not believe in heresy. If they were dead, they were dead. What dignity was there to talk about? All of you, leave this cave and prepare to return to the Void Ridge. I have a way to take the Liang Emperor sword and the Flame Ancestor's eyes, Yi Qinghan said firmly. You are crazy. If you want to die, can't you wait until the noble battle is over? The district master was flustered and exasperated. He wanted to stop Yi Qinghan from going to his death. Yi Qinghan wanted to take the risk, so he naturally had the ability to do so. His gaze was firm. He did not give Yi Qingxing and the district master a chance to refute. He said coldly, leave the cave and head towards the Void Ridge. I have the ability to survive. Yi Qingxing did not dare to disobey the young master of the Yen clan. He could only bow and carry the corpses of the elders of the Yen clan out of the underground palace along another path. The district master was also helpless at this moment. He quickly left the underground palace. There was only Yi Qinghan and the corpse in the cave. It was so quiet that it made one's hair stand on end. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan took out the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. He restrained his might and hovered in the air. The Liang Emperor sword seemed to have been activated. It shook slightly and the corpse shone brightly. The force sent Yi Qinghan flying dozens of meters and crashing into the mountain. Bang! Puff! Yi Qinghan involuntarily spat out a mouthful of essence blood. He looked at the corpse in shock. He had to admit that the glory and achievements of the immemorial era were completely different from this era. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan put his palms together and knelt in front of the corpse. He said respectfully, "Lord Supreme Liang Emperor Sword, I am Yi Qinghan, the inheritor of the Yen clan. Right now, the line of Master Chu and the Yen clan are struggling. I have already found the inheritor of Master Chu's line. However, Master Chu's line does not have the Emperor's sword. They cannot stand shoulder to shoulder with the heroes in this golden era. Please allow me to bring you out of seclusion and protect me as I take the flame ancestor's eyes away." Buzz! Whoosh! At this moment, the eyes in the Heaven Spirit Demon Emperor's hands seemed to have gained intelligence. The congealed blood dispersed and emitted a sacred light that could steal one's soul. It seemed to be able to see through all illusions. All cultivation techniques became clear in front of it. With it, one would be able to comprehend the laws of the human Tao at a rapid pace. This was why Yi Qinghan was so determined to obtain the flame ancestor's eyes. The Heaven Spirit Demon Emperor's corpse was only activated by the aura, but it was not in an attacking state. Unless someone touched its corpse, the corpse would not take the initiative to attack. Yi Qinghan grabbed the human Tao Emperor Pagoda with one hand and probed with his right hand. He wanted to grab the eyes in the corpse's hand. However, to grab the eyes with one hand in an instant, one not only needed speed, but also a calm heart. The Liang Emperor's sword did not move at all. It was as if it had a soul and eyes, watching Yi Qinghan. It was waiting for Yi Qinghan to make the first move before it could fly out of the corpse's body. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Whoosh! After Yi Qinghan probed a few times, his right hand activated the flame ancestor's arm. He pried open the corpse's fingers and took the eyes like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. Whoosh! Boom! In a split second, a ray of energy shot out from the depths of the underground palace. The star exploded from the inside and shattered into pieces. The light directly drowned the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. The Liang Emperor sword was pulled out in an instant and blocked in front of Yi Qinghan, giving him the last chance to escape. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan entered the human Tao Emperor Pagoda in the blink of an eye and was swept out of the endless energy by the pagoda. Boom! Whoosh! The dead star completely shattered. The aftermath chased after Yi Qinghan and the owner. As long as this energy caught up with them, the two would die without a doubt. Whoosh! The two madly rushed in the direction of the Void Ridge. They were as fast as lightning. Boom! Whoosh! The aftermath of the energy hit a dead star in the depths of the galaxy. The dead star was split open in an instant. This energy was indestructible. It represented the explosion of a primordial immortal emperor before his death. Anyone inside would be severely injured. Even a primordial immortal emperor would be injured. The Liang Emperor sword and the human Tao Emperor Pagoda worked together to resist the aftermath of the energy. The impact caused the void to distort and collapse continuously. Flames and air blasts spread for thousands of miles. Across the endless void, the explosion of the dead star could be seen from the Void Ridge. Many people in the fourth state did not dare to move. Chapter 2653. Boom! The dead star exploded, and the air rushed to the Milky Way, drowning countless miles. The airwaves even rushed to the Void Ridge. Everyone clearly felt a gust of air blow over, causing their celestial robes to flutter. The Emperor's sword was in the sky, shining brightly. A ray of light shot out from the flames and hung above the Milky Way. It was more dazzling than the stars. Other than the Mu Wu Divine Book, the Great Sun Emperor Sword was another primordial immortal emperor weapon. The owner and Yi Qinsheng were sent flying by the aftershocks. They turned to look at the dead star, their eyes filled with reluctance and despair. Even if the 5 celestial nation monarchs were here, they would probably be killed by such an energy blast. How could Yi Qinghan escape? Young master, Yi Qinsheng held the Yan ancestor's sword tightly. The sword whistled in the sky, full of anger. The murderous intent in his eyes was so thick that it was tangible. He stepped on the air, twisting the sky. But no one saw a shadow moving slowly in the flames. It was the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. It did not shine brightly like the Liang Emperor sword. Instead, it quietly left the center of the aftershocks and came to the periphery. Yi Qinghan hid in the 5th level of the pagoda, his heart still beating fast. He held the Yan ancestor's eyes in his hand. The feeling of fusion was unprecedented. It was a connection from the bloodline, a recognition from the bloodline. Yi Qinghan controlled the human Tao Emperor Pagoda and rushed to the periphery of the aftershocks. His figure flashed, and he killed his way out of the energy blast. He raised his hand, and the Liang Emperor sword automatically rushed into his hand. The sword pointed to the sky, connecting the sky above and the 9 underworlds below. Yi Qinghan's body was connected. Billions of stars shone brightly, and the power of the stars flowed into his body. His originally empty body became full again after an hour. Divine light sparkled all over his body. Yi Qinghan flew toward the void ridge on his sword. A moment later, he appeared in front of Yi Qinsheng and the owner. The owner and Yi Qinsheng looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. It was as if they had seen a ghost. How did you escape? The owner asked in shock. Yi Qinsheng was so excited that he didn't know what to say. Yi Qinghan did not answer the owner immediately. He looked at Yi Qinsheng, stretched out his hand, and said, "Give me the body of the elder of the Yan clan." Yi Qinsheng did not hesitate. He immediately lifted the corpses into the air respectfully. Yi Qinghan waved his hand, and with a flash of light, the corpses disappeared. In the blink of an eye, a shroud appeared in his hand, and he put it on. This marquis already said that if you don't have the ability, why would you send yourself to your death? Yi Qinghan replied methodically. The owner's eyelids twitched as he asked, "Where's the heavenly spirit emperor corpse?" Yi Qinghan shrugged and said indifferently, "Then I don't know. I left as soon as I obtained the flame ancestor's eyes. I don't know what happened after that." "Congratulations, young master, for obtaining my ancestor's eye." Yi Qinsheng was wild with joy and bowed to congratulate him. Yi Qinghan smiled and patted Yi Qinsheng's shoulder. He said, "You don't have to be so polite with me. There's no need for young master or young master. We're all from the Yan clan." "I wouldn't dare. You are the inheritor of the great ancestor, and I am the inheritor of the elder. There's an order of seniority, and I wouldn't dare to overstep my boundaries," Yi Qinsheng replied firmly. During the primordial age, there was a strict hierarchy. Bloodlines had the power to suppress everything. Basically, no one dared to offend their superiors. Yi Qinghan shook his head and said no more. He said indifferently, "When I return to the Jiangnan Immortal Valley, I will refine these eyes. The 6th level of the Law of the People Tao will be completed." Whoosh! With that, Yi Qinghan did not give the owner a chance to ask any more questions. His figure flashed as he rushed toward the Void Ridge. In the Jiangnan Immortal Valley, the 3 siblings had already come out of seclusion. The Liang Emperor's sword had appeared, and the call from the bloodline woke them up. Their eyes were full of excitement. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the void, the 3 figures chased after each other. One was faster than the other. The owner and Yi Qinsheng were running neck and neck, steadily suppressing Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan was talented, but his realm was still weaker. If he wanted to surpass the 2 of them, he had to reach the 6th level of the Law of the People Tao and advance to the 3rd level. A few months later, the 3 of them appeared in the Jiangnan Immortal Valley. No one from the crazy manor had come out of seclusion yet. They were racing against time. They would not come out of seclusion until they reached the second level. Even if some of them had reached the second level, they were desperately trying to consolidate their cultivation. Their resources were almost exhausted. Yi Qinghan held the Liang Emperor sword in his hand and bowed slightly. He offered the Liang Emperor sword with both hands and said in a low voice, "I have not let you down. The Liang Emperor sword is here. Brother Junxian, please accept it." Chu Shijun was excited. He knelt on one knee and raised his hands to welcome the sword. He said respectfully, "The inheritor of the Chu clan, Chu Shijun, greets the Lord Liang Emperor sword." "Welcome back, Lord Liang Emperor sword." That the Liang Emperor sword pointed to the sky with a monstrous aura. It appeared in Chu Shijun's hand. Although there was no scabbard, it was even more terrifying. It was like a primordial immortal emperor had appeared in the human world. Boom! The three siblings all knelt down. The appearance of the Liang Emperor sword was equivalent to Chu Shiliang's personal arrival. How could they dare to blaspheme it? The Liang Emperor sword didn't make a sound. It directly lifted Chu Shijun and his siblings up. Then, it retracted and automatically entered Chu Shijun's body. It turned into a seal on her forehead. It wouldn't awaken until the most crucial moment. Otherwise, it would delay Chu Shijun's cultivation. Chu Shijun looked at Yi Qinghan with gratitude in his eyes. He bowed and said, "Thank you, Brother Yi, for finding the Liang Emperor sword. Junxian owes you a big favor." Yi Qinghan smiled and bowed. "My Yan clan owes your Chu clan an even bigger favor. Brother, why are you being so polite with me?" Thump, 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 Chu Shijun nodded repeatedly. He patted his chest and said, "Then I won't say anything more. In the future, your business is my business. However, after obtaining the Liang Emperor sword, I will go into seclusion to cultivate again. I may not come out for 1,000 years." Yi Qinghan nodded and replied, "I will also go into seclusion for 1,000 years. I will leave the Jiangnan Immortal Valley to Yi Chenxing and the owner for the time being." Yi Chenxing naturally would not refute Yi Qinghan's words. The owner wanted Yi Qinghan to grow stronger as soon as possible so that he could become an emperor. He could wait for 1,000 years. Yi Qinghan returned to the Jiangnan Immortal Valley and found an empty ancient palace. He took out the Yen ancestors' eyes and directly formed a seal to refine them. At this moment, Yi Mingxi and Jian Chenxue joined forces to kill their way from the periphery of the Void Ridge. Along the way, Yi Mingxi's murderous aura shocked Jian Chenxue. She had just entered the first stage, but she could actually kill a second stage and was even comparable to a third stage. Once the merciless Dao seal was unleashed, heaven and earth roared. However, the five of them kept a low profile. Yan Yunbei was in charge of exploring the path ahead and specifically looking for safe routes to avoid places with large forces. They followed the clues left behind by the crazed manor. However, some of the marks had been washed away. They were now unable to find the real location of Yi Qinghan and the others. In the end, they were trapped in the center of the battlefield and could be attacked by large forces at any time. On this day, the crazed manor encountered a medium-sized force. The other party had 6 third-stage cultivators with different attire. It should be a cooperation between several forces, hoping to survive in this chaotic world. When they saw Yi Mingxi and the others, murderous aura shot out from their eyes. Killing people for treasures and fighting for resources was a common occurrence. If they did not do this, they would be eliminated sooner or later. The heroes unsheathed their swords and their auras were like rainbows. "Take out the crazed manor flag," Jian Chenxue immediately said. Yan Yunbei waved his hand and took out the crazed manor flag. It fluttered in the wind. The crazed manor flag was a symbol of faith, but it could also intimidate some small and medium-sized forces. Chapter 2654. The battle flag of the Quang Manor fluttered in the wind. Arrogant manor. The expert from the mid-tier faction was taken aback. Who in the Quang Manor didn't know about this? The revered Dragon Marquis had killed over 30,000 soldiers of the Quang Manor, but in the end he was captured alive by Yi Qinghan. If they dared to kill a direct descendant of the Kuang Manor, they would only do so if they wanted to exterminate their entire family. So it's fellow Taoist Kuangfu. It's a misunderstanding. The old man in the lead, who had almost stepped into the fourth state, hurriedly bowed and said, "This old man is the Yu clan's clan leader, Yu Qingfeng. Greetings, fellow Taoists from Kuangfu." Jian Chenxue was the mother of the world. His cultivation was not strong, but he was awe-inspiring. Kuang Manor's Jian Chenxue, heaven-suppressing Marquis Yi Qinghan's wife, greets Patriarch Yu. Jian Chenxue bowed slightly. "So it's the Marquis, madam. This old man greets you. Are you looking for a place to set up camp for the Kuang Manor?" Yu Qingfeng's eyes flashed as he looked at the third-degree realm experts beside him, as if they were discussing something. Those few third-stage realm experts all nodded their heads as their eyes were filled with anticipation. Jian Chenxue and the others were not 3-year-old children. Of course, they would not completely believe these people. Hence, they asked, "Does Yu clan master have any news about the Kuang Manor?" The Yu clan head immediately bowed. "Madam, the Kuang Manor is stationed in Jiangnan, forming an alliance with the Qingzhou Immortal Empire. However, that place is heavily guarded and no one is allowed to enter. This old man has a presumptuous request. I wonder if I should say it?" Jian Chenxue frowned and looked at Yu Qingfeng. He cupped his fists and said, "Family head Yu, please tell us. We will help if we can. If we can't help, there's nothing we can do." Those 6 third-stage realm cultivators all bowed and said, "We wish to pledge our loyalty to the Kuang Manor. We seek madam's approval." Jian Chenxue was stunned. He didn't expect this group of people to pledge their loyalty to the Kuang Manor. This was good news. Why didn't they head straight to the Kuang Manor? Why were they loitering here? You want to pledge your loyalty to Kuang Manor, and you know where they are. Why don't you just go and join them? Yan Yunbei asked without hesitation. Yu Qingfeng immediately cupped his fists and said, "Fellow Taoist of the Crazy Manor, you might not know this, but several major forces have joined forces to block the main roads leading to the Jiangnan Immortal Valley in order to prevent others from joining the Crazy Manor. We wouldn't dare to offend a major force." "How can I trust you?" Jian Chenxue asked seriously. Yu Qingfeng immediately replied, "Everyone knows about this. If you don't believe me, you can ask around. Actually, there are quite a few nobles who want to join the Crazed Manor. It's just that they don't have the means to do so. We're lucky to have met you. Perhaps those major forces wouldn't dare to go against the Crazed Manor? Which forces are blocking the road?" Jian Chenxue asked. "Madam, there are people from the Paragon Immortal Empire. The successor of the Great Sun Immortal Emperor, the Grand Elder of the Dragon Emperor Immortal Empire, Long Shao. There is also another Primordial Immortal Empire force that has never shown themselves, but is loyal to the successor of the Primordial Dao Master God." Yu Qingfeng immediately replied. Jian Chenxue pondered for a moment and immediately made up his mind. "We'll take the path of the ancient factions. We have no enmity with them, so I'm sure they won't fight to the death with Kuang Manor." Yan Yunbei frowned and thought about it. They had been separated from the Void Ridge for more than 1,000 years. It was hard to guarantee that Kuang Manor had no enmity with the successor of the Primordial Dao Master God. However, he had no intention of refuting Jian Chenxue. "Give me the route to the Jiangnan Immortal Valley. You family head, you'll be in charge of protecting Madam there. I'll secretly go to Kuang Manor first. I'll pick a day to bring Kuang Manor's army to support you. When you meet up with Kuang Manor, I guarantee that you'll have the same status as the brothers of Kuang Manor." Yu Qingfeng and the others were overjoyed. Kuang Manor valued relationships. It didn't matter who Kuang Manor protected. At least they wouldn't be like slaves if they followed Kuang Manor. This was what many nobles hoped for. "I guarantee that we'll complete the mission. As long as we don't die, Madam won't be harmed." Yu Qingfeng immediately promised. "What?" Yan Yunbei stood up straight and pressed the short blade in his right hand against his chest. The ancient massacre god's military salute was magnificent. Even though he was saluting alone, it was still domineering. Yan Yunbei looked at Yi Chen Tian, Medusa, Yi Mingxi, and the others. He signaled them with his eyes and then left the team. In a flash, he hid in the valley. Yu Qingfeng and the others seemed to really want to protect Jian Qinshui and the others to the Jiangnan Immortal Valley. About 30 people surrounded the four from Kuang Manor. Each of them pulled out their swords and rode on their immortal horses and ferocious beasts. Unless they encountered a big force, they weren't afraid of anyone else. There were corpses everywhere. Fallen nobles were wrapped in horse leather. There wasn't even a place to bury them. Desolation, loneliness, and deathly stillness were everywhere. More than 30 people rushed into the depths of Kuang Manor. The battle flag of Kuang Manor fluttered in the sky. Ordinary forces didn't want to provoke a force that sought revenge for the smallest grievance, so they didn't stop these people. Mount Xingliang was an endless mountain range. The peaks pierced through the clouds and poisonous creatures ran rampant. There was only one path across the mountain range. However, this place was occupied by the immemorial divine generals. They were loyal to the inheritor of the immemorial divine path. The inheritor of the immemorial divine path, Tao Sovereign, had already appeared. His cultivation was monstrous, and he was currently in seclusion to comprehend the fourth form. He would come out of seclusion once every 100 years to fight in all directions. They didn't care about Kuang Manor. They were just occupying this place as a resting place. They weren't blocking off Kuang Manor alone. However, it was impossible for anyone to pass through this place. Yu Qingfeng and the others protected Jian Qinshui and the others as they traveled for 100,000 miles. They spent a few months and encountered several big forces. Gu Jiutian and the ancient heavenly emperor had both encountered them. However, the two of them gave face to Kuang Manor and didn't make things difficult for this army. Instead, they gave them some resources as supplies. Kuang Manor naturally had some face. Now that Gu Jiutian had stepped into the second stage and had devoured countless resources, he was almost at the third stage. Once he entered the third stage, his divine will Lord God Spark would automatically seek an owner. By then it would be time for Gu Jiutian to soar into the sky. As more and more experts appeared, many young Supremes were looking for opportunities to kill the older generation experts. They didn't care about morality or rules. As long as they could kill, they would use any method. Therefore, the ancient heavenly emperor and other older Supremes kept a low profile. They didn't fight if they could. Jian Qinshui's army approached Xingliang Mountain. They raised their battle flags high and stopped 1,000 meters away from the entrance of the mountain range. Kuang Manor would like to pass through. I hope that the lord of your territory will be magnanimous and open the barrier to let us pass. Jian Qinshui rode on an immortal horse. He looked up at the guards on Xingliang Mountain and said in a deep voice, "Scram! Kuang Manor? What Kuang Manor? This is the territory of the immemorial Master God's inheritor. Even the Emperor's inheritor has to give way. Kuang Manor is nothing." A domineering voice reverberated through the mountain. It was extremely ear-piercing. The immemorial Master God's inheritor didn't know much about Kuang Manor and Yi Qinghan. Therefore, he rejected Jian Qinshui's request without hesitation. Jian Qinshui didn't act rashly. He stopped Yi Mingxi's restless hand and said in a low voice, "This is not the time to break through. Wait until Brother Yen finds help." Yu Qingfeng looked respectful and didn't dare to say anything. He could only rely on Jian Qinshui to give orders. Jian Qinshui waved his hand and signaled for them to retreat. He chose a place near the mountain to set up camp. He didn't want to offend the immemorial Master God's inheritor. At this time, Yan Yunbei had already taken a detour. He broke through the defense and arrived at the Jiangnan Immortal Valley. However, he was covered in injuries. Some of the poisonous gas had already invaded his flesh. His face was pale and he was on the verge of death. Chapter 2655. Yan Yunbei was covered in injuries. In order to open a path, he took a dead end. It was already a miracle that he was able to make it to Jiangnan Immortal Valley alive. Yi Qinxing did not recognize Yan Yunbei, but Yan Yunbei's crazy manor uniform was very obvious. He immediately flew over to greet Yan Yunbei. At this moment, Yan Yunbei almost fainted. Before he lost consciousness, he said, "Lucky Mountain, receive." Yi Chenxing didn't know what that meant, but the owner wasn't in seclusion. She noticed Yan Yunbei the moment he appeared. Her figure flashed and appeared at the entrance of Jiangnan Immortal Valley. Xingliang Mountain? The owner frowned and thought for a while, then said coldly, "This is a saint pill for curing poison. Give it to Yan Yunbei. I'll go receive the people from Crazed Manor. If they don't return in a year, immediately inform Yi Qinghan to come out." The owner could not know that Xingliang Mountain was occupied by Dao Sovereign. However, she didn't have much confidence in winning against Dao Sovereign. Even if they fought, both sides would suffer. Therefore, she set a 1-year deadline. If they reconciled, they could return in a dozen days. If they fought, there might be a result in a year. If they didn't return in a year, it meant that they might have lost. Whoosh! The owner flew through the sky and crossed hundreds of miles in a blink of an eye. At this time, Zhong Zhengfu received news that the wife of heaven-suppressing Marquis was blocked outside Xingliang Mountain by Dao Sovereign's people. He immediately ordered a 4th-form expert to lead more than 10 experts to attack Xingliang Mountain. He wanted to kill the people from Crazed Manor to avenge that day. However, the distance between the two sides was quite big. The owner was almost at Xingliang Mountain, but they had just left. A few days later, the owner appeared in the west of Xingliang Mountain. She stepped on the path and entered Xingliang Mountain. Qingzun Immortal Country's Shenyuan Square is here to visit Dao Sovereign. Please come out. The owner bowed. The two sides of the mountain were occupied by the immemorial divine generals. Hundreds of them looked down from above. The leading expert replied coldly, "My master is in seclusion. He won't see anyone. Leave quickly." The owner shook her head. It was indeed easy to meet the king of hell, but difficult to deal with the little ghosts. Therefore, she relied on her strength to force her way into Xingliang Mountain. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Divine light filled the sky as the divine weapons shot out in all directions, surrounding the owner in an instant. Whoosh. A barrier surrounded the owner of the district. Those divine weapons and crossbow bolts could not break through her defense at all. They forced their way through until they reached the first layer of the barrier. Boom, boom, boom. The district mistress formed a seal with her palms. Time and space reversed. With a light clap of her jade-like hands, mountains and rivers collapsed. Even Mount Xingliang was trembling. Crack, crack, crack. The first barrier was directly shattered, unable to block it at all. Dao Sovereign, I've personally come here. Is it so difficult to see you? The district mistress scolded coldly. Her voice reverberated throughout the entire Xingliang Mountain. Whoosh! An oppressive aura shot up into the sky as a gigantic hand that covered the sky broke through the mountains and rivers. It pressed down from above, intending to suppress the owner of the district. Boom! The district master's palms flipped the heavens, shattering the void. They collided powerfully, causing the great Dao to collapse. The two of them were actually evenly matched. The other party was almost at the level of a divine general. This person had already obtained the inheritance of a divine general. His cultivation was heaven-defying, and he was definitely not any weaker than the owner. Thud, thud, thud. The district mistress took a few steps back. She looked at the other party with a solemn expression as he somersaulted more than 10 times in the air. After dispersing all the force, he landed steadily on a mountain. Fellow Taoist, is it appropriate to barge into my master's place of seclusion? The middle-aged man's majestic aura radiated in all directions. Like immortal Emperor Qingzun, he gave off an aura that made people not dare to raise their heads. His words were full of charm and dharma and logos. I want to borrow your path and negotiate nicely. Unfortunately, this brat is difficult to deal with, so I have no choice but to barge in. I wonder if you, fellow Taoist, are willing to give me face? The district mistress asked in a deep voice. Although the divine general was not a primordial divine general, his combat strength was definitely not inferior to the district mistress. At this moment, he said coldly, "Face is earned through strength. But I'm sorry, your face is not useful in front of me. The galaxy reversal that you cultivate is the #1 divine ability below the immortal emperor realm. However, It does not include primordial divine generals. Even if you cultivate the galaxy reversal to the highest level, your combat strength is only comparable to a primordial divine general. Why should I give you face? If you retreat now, I will pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving today. The district mistress' expression sank. She clenched her fists and took a deep breath. Her fingertips spun, controlling the myriad of laws. Even though she was very angry, she restrained herself. She reminded in a low voice, "We are just borrowing your path. Do you want to make enemies so much? Your Tao over God's inheritance is not to be trifled with. Our Qingzun Immortal Empire and Kuang Manor are also not that easy to deal with. If you give up a path, there will be many more in the future. Why must you cut off the path of retreat?" The divine general sneered in disdain. "Since I don't even put the Qingzun Immortal Empire in my eyes, what is a small Kuang Manor? A nouveau riche who came out of nowhere, didn't he rely on the power of the Qingzun Immortal Emperor? Other than that, what else does he have to be proud of?" Asterisk. The district mistress spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Looking at the divine general's resolute attitude, she knew that it was unrealistic to barge in. This person had been in seclusion for so long, he must have understood the inheritance thoroughly. Moreover, he had obtained the godhead of a primordial divine general, which was equivalent to having 70 to 80% of the primordial divine general's strength. "Seems like we can only take a detour," the district mistress muttered to herself. She didn't want to stay here for too long, mainly because she was afraid that Jian Chenxue and the others would encounter misfortune in the valley on the other side. "It's a small world. Remember what you have done today," the district mistress said coldly and turned around to take a detour, speeding along the path of despair. These paths of despair were not easy to traverse. There were dangers everywhere, and poisonous creatures ran rampant. Some of the swamps even had powerful primordial poisonous creatures that could kill people without leaving a trace. In order to reach the other side of Xingliang Mountain as soon as possible, the district mistress could only force her way through. However, she was a top-notch expert in her fourth form after all. Along the way, she was scared but not in danger. Finally, she reached the other side after a month. Just as she arrived at the opposite side of Xingliang Mountain and met up with Jian Chenxue, one of Zhong Zhengfu's Tao protectors arrived with a group of experts. They blocked off the four from Kuang Fu and Yu Chengfeng's group at the foot of Xingliang Mountain. They could neither advance nor retreat. "It's you again, District Mistress Xian Yuan. Looks like it's not Yi Qinghan protecting you to become the emperor, but you protecting Yi Qinghan to become the emperor," the Tao protector said coldly. The district mistress snorted and said disdainfully, "You don't have to worry about that. You can't stop me with just these few people. Get lost." "Is that so? This old man can't stop you, but there are others who can. They can even capture you alive," the Tao protector sneered and quickly retreated more than 100 meters with his team. The void distorted and the ground shook. A figure appeared 30 meters in front of the district mistress. His aura was monstrous, and his divine power was vast. The 5 elements of heaven and earth were in chaos, making one's hair stand on end. It was the 5 elements master god's successor, Su Tinya. "Why are you here?" The district mistress's aura stagnated. This person was in the same cultivation level as Tao Sovereign before, but now, he was in the 3rd stage and was recognized by the primordial sovereign godhead. His combat power was much stronger than before. Su Tianya looked at the district mistress coldly and asked, "I heard that your heaven-suppressing palace's heaven-suppressing marquis might be from the Yen clan. I'm here to verify if it's true or not." The district mistress was instantly enraged. She felt that the 5 elements god priests might have betrayed Yi Qinghan. "However," she said firmly, "Su Tianya, do you think our celestial nation's monarch can't even tell if he is from the Yen clan? Although immortal monarch Qingzun is not a primordial immortal monarch, he was recognized by the heavens and became one of the 5 great immortal monarchs. How can the person he personally conferred be from the Yen clan?" Chapter 2656. Outside of Xingliang Mountain, the two sides were confronting each other. Perhaps the owner's strength was not the strongest, but she was definitely the most beautiful. Even the inheritor of the archaic main god shrine had to give her some face, so Su Tianya did not directly make a move. Hearing the owner's explanation, Su Tianya shook his head and said indifferently, Jin Yang, Mu Chengfeng, Shui Sihai, Feng Zhongnan, and Tang Zun, the 5 of them followed you from the beginning. They also guessed that Yi Qinghan was from the Yen clan. And this Dao friend just told me that Yi Qinghan might really be from the Yen clan. This matter is of great importance, so I advise you not to act recklessly. Hand these disciples over to me and I will bring them to the crazy sect to verify their authenticity. The owner took a deep breath and said angrily, to think that the 5 elements divine lord would be played like a monkey by the Dao protector of an emperor's successor. A few years ago, when they fought against Crazed Manor, both sides suffered heavy losses. That's why they're waiting for an opportunity to take revenge and slander Crazed Manor everywhere. Yi Qinghan does indeed have something from the Yen clan. The Yen ancestor's right arm was obtained from the ancient heavenly emperor. You can't possibly say that the ancient heavenly emperor is also from the Yen clan, right? Then how do you explain what Jin Yang, Tang Zun, and the others said? Su Tianya frowned and asked. The owner took a deep breath and said, Tang Zun and the others have never interacted with the heaven-suppressing Marquis. How can they make such a judgment? Isn't this nonsense? You don't need to ask. They have their own channels. Owner, I will give you face and not attack you. But let me take these people away. Su Tianya's indifferent words were filled with an incomparably firm order. The inheritor of the primordial master god was indeed not ordinary. His words and actions were law, and his cultivation was monstrous. He gave the owner great pressure. The strongest person in Kuang Manor was Yi Mengxi, but she was only comparable to a 3rd-degree realm expert. Moreover, it was just a fight. After a long time, she would definitely not be a match for a 3rd-degree realm expert. If the owner gave up, the fate of these people would be sealed. However, Yi Mengxi's face was cold and emotionless. She didn't even have the slightest bit of fear. What if I don't agree? The owner replied coldly. You can't stop me. Square owner, I don't want to cripple you on account of how difficult it was for you to cultivate. With your current realm, you simply can't reach the 4th form of the immemorial realm. But I am now comparable to an immemorial divine general, a true immemorial divine general, so you are not my opponent. Su Tianya said quietly. The district master's aura burst forth as he waved his hand to control the momentum of the world. I want to give it a try. Just as Yi Qinghan had said, didn't he say the same thing when faced with the emperor's legacy, Zhongzheng? I want to try. It was filled with unyielding stubbornness, unbending pride, and not hesitating to die. Su Tianya's eyes flickered. The strength of the owner was not weak. She might have been stopped by the protector of the Dao sovereign, but that did not mean that she was not strong. It was because the protector of the Dao sovereign was too strong. He did not lose to the current Dao sovereign, nor did he lose to Su Tianya, the inheritor of the 5 elements immemorial master god. Dao sovereign and Su Tianya were still young, so they had plenty of time. In less than 100,000 years, they could surpass that divine general's inheritance. After all, that divine general's inheritance had lasted for far too long. Then you can give it a try. Su Tianya said coldly. If you lose, I won't kill you. You will submit to me and become my slave. If you win, I won't ask about Yi Qinghan's identity anymore. The words "become my slave" struck the weak spot of the district master. Once she became his slave, it would be an eternal humiliation. The district master's gaze was cold, and she was silent for a long time. This meant that she did not have the confidence to win, and she might lose miserably. This was because Su Tianya had the immemorial Master God's spark, and the Master God's power in his body was endless. He was equivalent to an inexhaustible 4th form super expert. If she could not defeat him in a short period of time, she would be the one to lose. At this time, Yi Mengxi's eyes changed. There was actually a Dao seal condensing in her eyes, and there was not a trace of emotion. Merciless killing intent filled the air, and the merciless Dao rumbled incessantly. It was like raging waves crashing against the shore, and its aura reached the clouds. I hate arrogant alien races like you the most. You stand at the so-called high point of cultivation and judge others' lives. Yi Mingxi's cold voice made everyone's hair stand on end. Even Jian Chenxue was stunned. He hurriedly reached out to pull Yi Mingxi, hoping that she would restrain herself. However, when he was half a meter away from Yi Mingxi, he was repelled by a layer of energy. He could not touch her at all. Yi Chentian took a deep breath and hurriedly called out, "Auntie, don't be rash. Wake up." Medusa also called out in a low voice, and it reached the depths of Yi Mingxi's soul. Unfortunately, Yi Mingxi had already completely entered the merciless Tao. The merciless Tao, this Tao really does exist. I thought it was a made-up Tao of nothingness. Su Tianya looked at Yi Mingxi in surprise. She was only in the first stage, but she gave him a sense of danger. A trace of killing intent flashed in his heart. Since ancient times, no one had cultivated the merciless Tao. The legendary merciless Tao was too dry and lonely. There was no emotional fluctuation. Who could do it under normal circumstances? Powerful cultivators did not need to do this. They only needed to go into seclusion. They had inheritors and clansmen. Unless they were crazy, who would be willing to cultivate the merciless Tao? Unfortunately, Yi Mingxi had been guarding the imperial mausoleum alone for so long. Even with Yun accompanying her, there was not much to talk about. She had achieved the merciless Tao and mistakenly entered the merciless Tao. The owner looked back at Yi Mingxi and snorted, "Su Tianya, the battle between us will either result in death or becoming an emperor. There is no winner or loser." Boom! The owner stomped on the ground and soared into the sky. The wind and clouds between heaven and earth suddenly changed. Day turned into night. Billions of stars flashed in the Milky Way. The vast universe seemed so grand at this moment. Whoosh! The owner's aura soared to the sky. He looked down and said proudly, "The Milky Way reversal. Today, I will prove that it is not the number one divine ability below the immortal emperor realm, but a true emperor technique. It is comparable to the sun, moon, and sky. Then I will let you see the 5 elements technique." Whoosh! Su Tianya soared into the sky. The 5 elements were in chaos. Anyone who used the 5 elements lost control. In front of him, those who cultivated the 5 elements could no longer fight. Whoosh! The owner and Su Tianya clashed and started a battle of life and death. It was no longer a gambling battle. This battle would result in either death or injury. Boom, boom, boom. The sky roared and the ground cracked. Every attack of the two contained the Tao of sure kill. Billions of stars, space-time distorted, and ancient order collapsed. Not long after the two started fighting, Yi Mingxi rushed towards Zhongjing Fu's Tao Protector. The only 4th form was blocked. It was unknown who would win and who would lose. Boom! Yi Mingxi attacked mercilessly. Her physical body was tempered by the merciless thunder calamity. It would not lose to Yi Qinghan's absolute saint golden body. The merciless Tao seal was indestructible. It could even penetrate the defensive energy of the 4th form and attack the physical body directly. Boom, boom, boom. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Yi Mingxi and the 4th form expert rushed into the distance, leaving a large space for Yu Qingfeng and the others to fight. "Let's end this quickly," Jian Chenxue ordered. Medusa and Yi Chentian took the lead and rushed forward. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Woo, woo, woo. In a split second, heavy snow swirled in the air, drowning the mountains and rivers. Thousands of ice swords filled the sky. The sword's cry shook the 9 heavens. The murderous aura of the 10,000 swords returned to origin shocked everyone. Yu Qingfeng and the others were shocked. They did not expect to fight against a major force. However, this was the best time to pledge their loyalty to the Kuang sect. If they won this battle, the Kuang sect would acknowledge them. It's time to make a contribution. We don't want to be slaves. This battle is the best time. What are we waiting for? Yu Qingfeng roared and took the lead to attack. Chapter 2657. Outside Xingliang Mountain, blood flowed like a river. The masters from the 3 sides were fighting, and their killing intent was soaring. The Great Path Master God's inheritance was indifferent. They watched the three sides fight to the death, waiting for both sides to suffer so that they could reap the benefits. The Tao Master's guardian watched the battle indifferently. He waved his hand to mobilize the masters and said coldly, "None of these three forces can be let go. Kill Xinyuan Square and Su Tian Cliff. As for the others, it's best to capture them alive. Those who can't be captured alive will be killed without mercy." Hundreds of masters looked down and waited for the opportunity to attack. Time flew like a shuttle. The sun set and the moon rose and the stars moved. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 days had passed. The two masters in the fourth state were still fighting, but several people from Yu Qingfeng's group of small forces had died. Medusa and Yi Chen-tian were seriously injured. Only Jian Chenxue was controlling the snow and ice swords to attack indiscriminately. Even if he couldn't kill the enemy, he could stop them from losing. Yu Qingfeng and the other masters in the third state cooperated with Jian Chenxue to attack and defend. They repelled the enemy's attacks several times, but the enemy also suffered many casualties. It was a situation where both sides suffered. The most terrifying thing was the battle with Yi Mengxi. A master in the first state resisted the master in the fourth state. The merciless Tao seal killed thousands of Tao. She was emotionless and selfless. She didn't look back even when her battle clothes were stained with blood. The fourth state master's hair stood on end. He had never been afraid of a certain kind of people, even the Yen clan. However, Yi Mingxi's merciless Tao was only a legendary thing. No law or divine power could stop the merciless Tao seal. Boom, boom, boom. The merciless Tao seal radiated from Yi Mingxi's eyes. Thousands of divine light rose from the ground and covered half of the mountains and rivers. The heavenly way is emotionless. Then I can represent the heavenly way, Yi Mingxi said in a low voice. She controlled the momentum of heaven and earth. Her body was almost dry, and her flesh shrank. She was almost fighting with her life. Boom! Yi Mingxi's palm fell from the sky. The Tao seal crushed the order and the mountains and rivers. A thought that could destroy everything hit the Milky Way. It was so oppressive that even the divine general's inheritor's pupils shrank. What kind of Tao is this? She is so emotionless. Her killing aura doesn't even exist. I can't believe that a marionette can unleash such terrifying power. Even though Yi Mingxi was powerful, he was still disdainful because such a person could no longer be considered a human. She was just a battle puppet. There was no meaning to it. This was also the reason why no one in the Archean era practiced this great Tao. Boomed right at this moment, the merciless Tao imprint shattered everything, killing until the mountains and rivers moved in grief, and all living things shed tears. It directly clashed with that fourth state expert, and waves of energy spread out for 1,000 li, bringing disaster to the fighting crowd outside Xingliang Mountain. Plus, dozens of people were blown away, including Jian Chenxue and the severely injured Yi Chen-tian. They crashed into the barrier outside Xingliang Mountain. Almost all of Zhong Zhengfu's subordinates were vomiting blood. Yu Qingfeng and the others' vision turned black and they almost fainted. Capture him! The successor of the primordial divine general waved his hand, and more than 100 masters rushed down from Xingliang Mountain and quickly surrounded the masters of both sides. They were all severely injured and unable to fight back, so they could only let the other side capture them. The powerful inheritor of the immemorial divine general intimidated everyone, and no one dared to make a move. Jian Chenxue immediately said, "Don't resist, wait for help." Everyone was captured, including Zhong Zhengfu's people. Tao Master's people wanted resources, but it was up to Kuang Fu and Zhong Zhengfu if they were willing to spend resources to redeem these people. At this moment, Yi Mingxi's merciless Tao was getting purer and purer. All the emotions in her body were refined by the merciless Tao. Her power was getting stronger, but her vitality was decreasing, and she was close to death. Jiangnan Immortal Valley. Yi Qinghan was in seclusion to comprehend the 6th level of the human Tao. However, he felt uneasy at this moment, and his Tao heart was fluctuating. His eyelids kept twitching, which was a warning from his bloodline. Yi Qinghan opened his eyes and frowned. The warning was even more serious after he woke up. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan rushed out of seclusion and came to the outside of the valley. Yi Chenxing was still guarding the mountain, and he immediately asked, "Did anything big happen recently?" Yi Chenxing did not hesitate and immediately replied, "2 months ago, a person called Yan Yunbei came. He said that Xingliang Mountain was going to receive him, and that the owner had already gone. He said that if he did not return within a year, he would ask me to call you out." Boom! Yi Qinghan stomped on the ground and sped through the air, heading straight for Xingliang Mountain. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Yi Qinghan's speed was extremely fast, and the 9 beads chain gourd provided him with endless power. As soon as he landed, he crushed the mountain rocks and dove into the distance. The 7-foot heavy saber slashed through the air, and its blade emitted a cold light, splitting the order. It was almost as if he was using a forbidden technique as he moved toward Xingliang Mountain. The journey that should have taken more than 10 days finally took Yi Qinghan 2 days to reach Xingliang Mountain. Xingliang Mountain's barrier covered the mountains and rivers, and light shone in all directions. Boom! Yi Qinghan did not even ask. He slashed through the mountains and rivers, and directly cut through the first layer of the barrier. Boom! Yi Qinghan landed on the main road of Xingliang Mountain, and his eyes were sharp. He scanned the surroundings and shouted angrily, "Open the barrier!" Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's murderous intent soared into the sky, and it reverberated through the entire valley of Xingliang Mountain. The successor of the primordial divine general was still opposite Xingliang Mountain, and he did not have time to defend himself. Yi Qinghan saw that no one was opening the barrier, and that they were being attacked instead. He raised his saber and slashed again, breaking through the second defensive barrier. Buzz! Whoosh! All 9 mouths of the 9 beads chain gourd opened and began to devour the barrier's energy. The energy barrier became extremely weak, and it could not withstand Yi Qinghan's attack at all. Boom! Bang! Yi Qinghan was annoyed by the attacks of some of the priests. He retracted the heavy saber with his right hand and punched through the mountains and rivers. He directly destroyed the mountain peak occupied by more than 10 priests. The priests were drowned in the energy, and they were annihilated alive. More than 10 consecutive barriers were broken, and Yi Qinghan did not even take half an hour. Boom! When Yi Qinghan punched through Xingliang Mountain, the successor of the primordial divine general only reacted. He looked coldly at Yi Qinghan, and his eyes flashed with murderous intent. However, when Yi Qinghan saw that Yi Mingxi was almost dead and had fallen into the ruthless Tao, and when he saw Jian Chenxue, Medusa, and Yi Chentian being tied up, his murderous intent was much stronger than the successor of the primordial divine general. Good. Very good. I did not want to participate in the battle, but you forced me. From today onwards, Kuang Manor will officially participate in the War of the Nobles. Boom! Yi Qinghan stomped on the ground, and his body moved like lightning. Flames appeared on his right fist, and he faced Zhong Jingfu's Dao Protector with a punch. When the Dao techniques collided, smoke rose everywhere, and the mountains and rivers moved. Crack! The bones in the Dao Protector's hand were broken, and he was sent flying to the back. His body fell heavily on the ground, but before he could dodge, Yi Qinghan stomped on his throat, crushing it. Then he punched fiercely, and his head was smashed into the rock. Brain matter splattered, and blood flowed all over the ground. The soul in the 4th state did not even have time to scream before it fell into darkness, and entered the eternal chaos of nirvana. The first person in the 4th state died tragically, and it signaled that the War of the Nobles had reached its climax. When Yi Mingxi saw Yi Qinghan appear in front of her, her lips curled into a silent smile. Her body was exhausted, and she slowly fell down. Her fingers reached forward, as if she wanted to hold onto Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan's figure flashed, and he grabbed Yi Mingxi's waist. He said hoarsely, "You idiot, why did you enter the ruthless Tao? What did I say back then?" Unfortunately, Yi Mingxi could no longer hear him. Her soul and vitality were about to reach the end. Yi Qinghan waved his hand, and a light flashed on his forehead, and Yi Mingxi disappeared. Boom! Yi Qinghan roared angrily, and he unsheathed his saber. He stabbed it into the ground, and a violent wind blew in all directions. It swept up the black hair of the gods on Xingliang Mountain, and their divine robes fluttered. Seeing Yi Qinghan's shroud fluttering in the wind, his black hair fluttering, and his killing intent intertwining, the immemorial divine general's successor's heart sank, and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. That ruthlessness and willpower that would rather die than live in dishonor were truly frightening. Boom, boom, boom. Whoosh! The Yi Qinghan dragged 7-foot crazy man toward Xingliang Mountain and said coldly, "Leave the people of the crazy manor to me. That depends on whether you're willing to part with your resources." The immemorial divine general's successor retracted his fear and said coldly. Yi Qinghan's killing intent surged, and his voice was as cold as ice, cutting into the bodies of the gods. "I'll use the heads of all the gods on Xingliang Mountain in exchange for them. If you dare to kill anyone of my crazy manor, I guarantee that not even a blade of grass on Xingliang Mountain will be left alive today." Chapter 2658. Tat tat tat. Boom boom boom. Yi Qinghan slowly climbed up Xingliang Mountain. Every step he took caused mountains and rivers to collapse. His aura was so powerful that it could crush the aura of the gods. In terms of aura, there were not many people who could compare to Yi Qinghan. Even the inheritance of an emperor was only so. Even the primordial immortal emperor's murderous aura was not as strong when he was young. The light in Yi Qinghan's eyes seemed to be even more emotionless. Yi Qinghan's eyes were not for the enemies, but for the people of Insane Manor. "Do you want the heads of all the people on the mountain or resources?" Yi Qinghan asked coldly as he reached the middle of the mountain. His aura was even stronger. The primordial divine general's inheritor's murderous aura was restrained. His eyes narrowed into a thin line as he unsheathed his divine sword and pointed it at Jian Chenxue. He said coldly, "It seems that I have underestimated the master of Insane Manor. However, in my opinion, you are still an ant. If you dare to take another step, this sword will pierce through this beauty's throat." Boom! Yi Qinghan stabbed the sword into the rock beneath his feet and took out the immemorial Yin-Yang sword. He stared at Jian Chenxue. This time, he could only gamble that Jian Chenxue could pull out the immemorial Yin-Yang sword. Jian Chenxue was already extremely cold. If she could not pull out the immemorial Yin-Yang sword, it meant that this was her fate. "You want resources? How about this immemorial Yin-Yang sword?" Yi Qinghan asked coldly. How could the primordial divine general not know about the immemorial Yin-Yang sword? It was an extremely powerful sword of the Taigu Emperor. However, to them, it was also a useless sword. No one could pull it out or use it. What was the point of having it? The Flame Ancestor's right arm and the 9-linked gourd. "I only want these two in exchange for the lives of your people." The primordial divine general's inheritor could not help but sneer when he saw Yi Qinghan compromise. Taking away Yi Qinghan's Flame Ancestor's arm and 9-linked gourd was equivalent to cutting off his 2 arms. So what if his aura was strong? Yi Qinghan threw his head back and laughed maniacally. His laughter caused the sky to tremble and the mountains and rivers to tremble. Whoosh! "Draw your sword." Yi Qinghan threw out the immemorial Yin-Yang sword and stared at Jian Chenxue. He let out a low roar that shook the heavenly river. The immemorial Yin-Yang sword pierced through the void and appeared at the top of the mountain. Jian Chenxue's hands were tied up, but there was no restriction on his mind power. He used his mind power to wrap around the sword hilt. Boom! The inheritor of the immemorial divine general did not manage to kill Jian Chenxue in time. He swung his sword at the immemorial Yin-Yang sword, wanting to cut it down. However, just as lightning flashed and thunder roared, the immemorial Yin-Yang sword unsheathed itself. A long rainbow pierced through the mountains and rivers, causing the way of heaven to submit. The sword chi shook off the divine chains on Jian Chenxue's arms. It seemed to be able to control itself and appeared in Jian Chenxue's hands. Open! Jian Chenxue swung his sword and slashed horizontally, sweeping across the mountains and rivers. Even the mountain peaks were chopped off. The The sword Qi directly sliced apart half of Xingliang Mountain, flattening the peak. Boom! Kacha! The inheritor of the immemorial divine general had goosebumps. He swung his sword in front of him to block, but the immemorial divine general's natal divine sword was directly sliced apart. The sword Qi sliced through his lower body, and the immemorial divine general's supreme inheritor's legs were directly chopped off. Ugh. No! Boomed up, the inheritor of the immemorial divine general's body flew backward. His qi and blood were in turmoil. He spat out a large mouthful of essence blood and fell heavily onto the path of Xingliang Mountain. His body was twisted and bleeding nonstop. Even if he used his immemorial divine power, he could not stop his wounds from bleeding. The immemorial divine general's godhead exploded. Divine power surged and wrapped around his legs. It was as though he had exhausted his source. In an instant, his legs were suppressed and his body was reconstructed. Soon, his body was mostly restored, but his realm dropped from the 4th state to the 3rd state. His strength had dropped by more than 100 times. This was still Jian Qinshui using the immemorial yin-yang sword. If the immemorial yin-yang sword had activated the Emperor's sword's power, this inheritor of the immemorial divine general would have died. After Jian Qinshui swung the sword, he quickly cut the chains on Yi Tian, Medusa, and the others. He quickly cut off the chains on them and Yu Chengfeng and the others. Then, he quickly led the others down the mountain. The people of the immemorial divine general's bloodline were stunned. They did not expect Jian Qinshui to use his mind to pull out the immemorial yin-yang sword and let them escape down the mountain. However, after a while, the immemorial yin-yang sword was sheathed again. Jian Qinshui could not pull it out no matter how hard he tried. The immemorial yin-yang sword had its own consciousness. It felt that Jian Qinshui was qualified to pull it out. However, it was only qualified and not recognized. This time, it was pulled out to save people. Whether it could be recognized or not depended on whether Jian Qinshui could refine the immemorial yin-yang jade and cultivate the immemorial yin-yang immortal code. However, since he had saved them, Yi Qinghan did not care anymore. He waved his hand and said, "Qinshu, take them down the mountain first. Today, I will raise Xingliang Mountain to the ground." Whoosh! Jian Qinshui and the others quickly rushed down the mountain and found a place to rest and heal their wounds. Yu Chengfeng and the others were seriously injured. At this time, they were lucky to be alive. Their lives and Taoist hearts had been sublimated. Da-da-da. Boom! Yi Qinghan pulled out his saber again and rushed to the top of Xingliang Mountain. He slashed continuously. All the divine worshippers below the 3rd level were killed. Blood flowed down and dyed Xingliang Mountain red. Bodies rolled down. As he said, not even a blade of grass survived. Wherever Yi Qinghan passed, bodies piled up and blood spurted. His eyes were cold and ruthless, as if he wanted to kill everything. Demon! The successor of the immemorial divine general looked up at Yi Qinghan slaughtering his clansmen at the top of the mountain and could not help but be furious. He gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He took out something that looked like a heart from the divine ring and swallowed it directly. Yi Qinghan, if I don't kill you today, I am not a man. As soon as the successor of the immemorial divine general swallowed the heart-like thing, his cultivation rose rapidly. His momentum soared and his battle strength rose rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he rushed to the 4th state. He had returned to his peak state and was even stronger than before. That was the heart of his ancestor. This was the true treasure of medicine. Once he swallowed the heart of the immemorial divine general, his strength would reach the peak of the immemorial divine general in just a short 1,000 years. In the past, he did not use it because he wanted to rely on himself. He did not want to blaspheme his ancestor. But now, he had no choice. Yi Qinghan was about to kill all the experts of his clan. Boom! The successor of the immemorial divine general soared into the sky and blocked Yi Qinghan's path at the top of the mountain. The 2 experts' auras were like rainbows, and their killing intent shattered the order. You've got guts. You even dared to kill the divine general's divine worshippers. I will uproot your crazy manner. I will not leave a single person alive. He roared, and the broken sword in his hand shone with a divine light. Yi Qinghan looked at him coldly. He waved his hand and took away the 7-foot crazed hammer. Suddenly, his eyes flashed with a light that could swallow the heavens. The successor was so frightened that he took 10 steps back. You also obtained the flame ancestor's eyes. The successor of the immemorial divine general sucked in a breath of cold air. The killing intent in his eyes grew thicker. Boom! Yi Qinghan punched through space and shouted angrily, "What I obtained has nothing to do with you. Your actions today have resulted in this result. I will slaughter your entire clan." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom! His right arm shone brightly as he punched his opponent's broken sword. The sword trembled, and the terrifying force sent it flying into the palace behind. Chapter 2659. Yanzu's arm was comparable to the Taigu Emperor's weapon. This punch contained the power to shatter the stars. The heir of the primordial divine general was pushed back dozens of meters by pure physical strength. He crashed into an ancient building and collapsed it. Resources? You may be alive to take them, but will you be alive to spend them? Yi Qinghan's voice was hoarse and piercing to the bone. After his successful punch, he grabbed the broken sword with his left hand and punched Yi Qinghan's chest with his right fist. His fist smashed through the ancient stone wall as fast as lightning. Boom! Boom! Yi Qinghan was like a ferocious tiger. His iron fists rained down on the heir of the primordial divine general, making him spit out blood. The heir of the primordial divine general was indeed powerful. If it had been someone else, he would have been killed by so many punches. However, he only spat out blood. He flipped his body and used the momentum to shake off Yi Qinghan. His power was vast. He flipped the broken sword in his hand and almost cut off Yi Qinghan's left hand. The broken sword was like a rainbow. Its murderous aura was soaring. Yi Qinghan, I will send you on your way. The sword chi tore the void and destroyed all Taoism. Its moves changed rapidly. Yi Qinghan was forced to retreat continuously. His eyes flashed brightly as he saw through Yi Qinghan's moves. However, this Archean divine general's successor was too fast. Even if Yi Qinghan could see through Yi Qinghan's moves, he couldn't resist. Boom! Boom! The broken sword stood on Yi Qinghan's right arm. Sparks flew everywhere. Their hands were numb and almost broken. Boom! The aftermath sank several palaces and cracked mountains. However, it still did not shake Taoist master out. The heir of the primordial divine general alone was enough to stop Yi Qinghan. The fight between the two was not any weaker than the fight between Su Tianya and the owner. 2 of them were in the starry sky and the other 2 were on the mountain peak. The aftermath spread for countless miles and shocked countless forces. This kind of desperate fight between superforces was rare in the early stage of the noble battle. However, today there were 4 masters fighting at once. It seemed that the void ridge would be shattered. Killed at an angry roar sounded, shattering the nebula. The ancient divine ability displayed its might, and streak after streak of rainbow light pierced through the stellar river. God slaying and immortal slaying. One sword pierces the rainbow and cries of eternity. Boom! Whoosh! Roar. In a battle of supreme divine abilities, neither side was willing to admit defeat, all of them fighting with their lives on the line. Yi Qinghan was incomparably powerful. His punches almost shattered the broken sword. The clansmen of this primordial divine general were all sent flying by the aftershocks. They fell into pools of blood and suffered heavy casualties. Bathed in the river of blood, the 2's battle robes and corpse wrapping cloth were soaked in blood, dyed in divine blood. When the sky is covered by darkness, I will dye this land red with the blood of immortals and gods. Tear apart this endless darkness. Yi Qinghan stomped his foot, and the mountain under his feet collapsed, sinking dozens of meters. The 9-linked gourd swallowed all the power of the mountains and rivers to support his consumption. Meanwhile, the primordial divine general's successor used the primordial divine general's divinity as a foundation and continuously used his divine power to fight Yi Qinghan to the death. Both of them were stubborn. When they used their divine skills and divine abilities to the limit, their physical bodies resisted the explosion, displaying the domineering and poignant beauty of an ancient battle. Boom! Whoosh! The sky roared, and lightning flashed. Red clouds covered the sky, as if they were sending off a supreme being. At this moment, the battle between Su Tianya and the owner of the district had reached its climax. The more they fought, the braver they became. They fought from the sky to the ground, and Xingliang Mountain was almost flattened. Jian Chenxue and the others did not have time to rest. They started to move back together. The immemorial yin-yang sword emitted a dense energy light, blocking the aftershocks. Crystal clear ice rose from the ground, but it was shattered into fine powder in the blink of an eye. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of fourth form experts rushed over from afar. Many years ago, the supreme beings had been hiding in the depths, looking for an opportunity to kill this powerful opponent. The ancient heavenly emperor had arrived, so had Emperor Duan. Gu Jiutian had also arrived with the divine general Taijiang's bloodline. Zhong Xingfu had arrived personally. Seeing one of his Dao protectors almost sunk into the ground, and his corpse was split into two, he could not help but be furious. The Thunder Emperor stepped on lightning and arrived. No one dared to stand still as they watched the battle between the four. They did not expect that Su Tianya was the only one who had inherited the immemorial Master God. The others were not. Is that person Yi Qinghan from the Crazy Manor? He can actually be compared to an immemorial divine general's inheritor. Not bad, he can be my slave and fight for me. The Thunder Emperor put his hands behind his back. The origin of thunder and lightning seemed to be surging in his thunder battle robe. Endless power was hidden in his body. His eyes were domineering, as if an immemorial immortal emperor had personally arrived. Boom! Whoosh! The mountains and rivers were in chaos, and all living things were trembling. The weak fled, but the strong took the initiative to approach. They looked coldly at the four people who were crazily fighting. They were all risking their lives. If they lost, they would die. If they won, the probability of becoming an emperor would be infinitely increased. Boom! The immemorial divine general's inheritor that Yi Qinghan was fighting was kicked away again. His chest caved in, and blood spurted out of his mouth. However, Yi Qinghan was in a worse state. His chest was directly pierced by the broken sword. However, the broken sword was still in his body, so he could still control the bleeding. Otherwise, his identity would have been exposed. After losing the broken sword, the immemorial divine general's situation became even worse. In terms of physical strength, he could not win against Yi Qinghan. Boom! Yi Qinghan pulled back his fist as if he wanted to punch through the void ridge. His right fist was unstoppable, and it could shatter mountains and rivers. Die for me! Boom! Hua! Yi Qinghan used 90% of his strength in this punch. He only used 10% of his strength to defend his surroundings. The momentum of this punch was monstrous, and it drowned everything. In the blink of an eye, an ancient palace was flattened, and several divine general experts who were waiting for an opportunity to strike were killed. Bang! The immemorial divine general's inheritor was filled with murderous intent. He was unwilling to be defeated. He threw a powerful punch, and his godhood was mobilized. However, he seemed to have forgotten that Yi Qinghan's right arm was not his, but Yanzu's. Crack! His divine bones were broken, and the immemorial divine general's right arm was smashed into a bloody mess. The immemorial divine general's godhood was shaken out of his body. Roar! The immemorial divine general let out a mournful roar. He was unwilling to lose to a junior, but his body was uncontrollably smashed backward. Yi Qinghan's veins bulged. He bounced up, wanting to take advantage of the situation to kill. His body curled up in the air, and he used his bones to hit the immemorial divine general. What boom! At this moment, the great Tao of heaven and earth roared and gathered into a sword of immortality. It fell from the sky and pierced Yi Qinghan's back. Yi Qinghan was shocked. He immediately changed his attack. He kicked the immemorial divine general's broken body and used the momentum to retreat more than 1,000 meters away. He waved his hand to take the 9-linked gourd. Yanzu's eyes pierced through the void, and he directly saw the attacker's location. Dao Master had appeared. A very young man, about 25 or 26 years old, with delicate features and clear eyes, walked in the air. The great Tao of heaven and earth roared, welcoming his arrival. Yi Qinghan sneered and said, "Beat the dog, and the master will come. However, my goal today is not to beat the dog, but to flatten Xingliang Mountain. Not even a blade of grass will survive. Whether it's the master or the dog, I will kill them all." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.